Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 created the celestial Omnitrix and got Harem of Kai, Julie and Xylene. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Celestial Genesis. The desert night pulsed with ancient power. Moonlight cascaded over sandstone formations that had guarded their secrets for millennia, casting long shadows that seemed to move with purpose rather than merely following the moon's slow journey across the star-speckled sky. Within these shadows, something stirred, something that had slumbered since before humans had first kindled fire. 20 miles away, Kai Green brushed sand from the intricate carvings on what appeared to be ordinary rock but was decidedly not of Earth origin. Her slender fingers traced symbols that resembled Sumerian cuneiform form yet incorporated astronomical configurations impossible for ancient humans to have observed without advanced technology. The cool night air carried the scent of sage and something metallic, something alien, that tickled her nostrils as she worked. Fascinating, she murmured, the word barely audible as her digital recorder captured her observations. The glyph sequence suggests Galvan influence, but these stellar coordinates predate known Galvan contact with Earth by at least 8,000 years. Kai's black hair was pulled back in a practical braid that hung between her shoulder blades, swaying slightly as she leaned closer to capture detailed images with her specialized camera. The archaeological dig site was officially investigating anomalous pre-Columbian artifacts, but that as merely the cover story her grandfather's colleagues at the Plumbers had arranged. What she was actually tracking was far more significant, evidence that Earth had been visited not just by aliens in general, but specifically by the creators of the Omnitrix long before recorded history. Her satellite phone vibrated against her hip. Only 3 people had this number, and 2 of them would never see. All at 2:17 a.m. unless something was catastrophically wrong. She slipped the device from her pocket and answered without checking the display. Green. Kai, it's Gwen. The voice on the other end sounded tense but controlled. Something's happening with the Omnitrix. Ben's been different. He's asking for you specifically. Kai straightened, her spine stiffening as her free hand instinctively sought the ceremonial dagger at her belt, a family heirloom that had proven effective against more than just earthly threats. Different how? She asked, already mentally calculating the fastest route. Ida Bellwood from her remote location in the New Mexico Badlands. He's been locked in his lab for weeks. Yesterday he emerged speaking at least 3 alien languages simultaneously and drawing equations that made my advanced magical theory textbooks look like kindergarten math. Gwen paused, and Kai could hear the concern bleeding through her normally composed tone. He said he needs your edge of Earth's first contact to stabilize something called the celestial Omnitrix. The word sent an electric chill down Kai's spine. Her grandfather's stories had mentioned a celestial mechanism that the ancient sky people had left behind, a device that could reshape reality itself. She had always assumed they were just legends. I'm on my way, she said, already gathering her equipment. Keep him stable. Don't let him activate anything until I get there. As Kai hurried toward her rugged expedition vehicle, the ground beneath her feet trembled almost imperceptibly. Deep below the desert floor, systems that had remained dormant for 12 millennia registered a spike in energy that matched parameters set by their long-departed creators. Activation sequences began their slow, inexorable initialization. The hunt had begun. Ben Tennyson's laboratory bore little resemblance to the bedroom where he had once kept action figures and soccer trophies. The converted warehouse spa, hummed with technologies salvaged from a dozen different worlds, retrofitted and reimagined by a mind that had long since transcended ordinary human limitations. Holographic displays projected multi-dimensional equations that twisted and reformed as they processed variables beyond conventional mathematics. At the center of this technological symphony stood Ben himself, changed from the impulsive teenager who had once treated the Omnitrix as merely a tool for superheroics. At 24, he moved with the fluid precision of someone perfectly attuned to his own body. His features had sharpened into handsome angularity, green eyes bright with intelligence that seemed to process multiple realities simultaneously. The Omnitrix on his wrist no longer resembled the watch-like device of his UTH but had evolved into an elegant armband of shifting metals that seemed to phase between solid and liquid states. "The convergence is accelerating," he stated, addressing his cousin without looking. G up from the hovering display where DNA sequences interwove with cosmic coordinates. 3 more hours and the window closes for another 76 years. Gwen Tennyson, her red hair now cropped short in a practical style that suited her dual roles as sorceress and intergalactic diplomat, observed her cousin with a mixture of awe and concern. "Ben, you need to explain what's happening. You've been speaking in riddles for days." He turned to face her, his expression softening momentarily as he seemed to remember that not everyone had spent the past month perceiving reality through the enhanced consciousness he now experienced. "Sorry," he said, his voice returning to something closer to the Ben she recognized. "It's difficult to translate what I'm seeing into linear speech." He gestured toward the Omnitrix. "Azimuth built limitations into this device, safeguards to prevent certain combinations of alien DNA and cosmic energies from interacting. I always thought it was about preventing power misuse, but it wasn't. It was about timing." His hands moved through the holographic display, manipulating energy patterns that shifted like living creatures. "There's a cosmic alignment occurring now that happens once every 76 years. During this alignment, the barriers between dimensions thin just enough to allow the Omnitrix to evolve into what Azimuth always intended, the celestial Omnitrix." Gwen approached cautiously. "And this evolution requires Kai's knowledge because the first prototype wasn't created by Azimuth at all." Ben's eyes gleamed with discovery. "It was left on Earth by an ancient Galvan expedition, predecessors who understood that humanity would eventually produce someone capable of wielding it. Kai's archaeological research has unknowingly been tracking pieces of that original device for years." A proximity alert chimed softly. Ben straightened, a curious mixture of professional focus and personal anticipation crossing his features. "She's here. Kai had barely set foot inside the laboratory when she felt it, a resonance that made the artifacts in her expedition pack vibrate in response. Her eyes widened as she took in the transformed space and, more significantly, the transformed Ben Tennyson. He moved toward her with a confidence that was entirely new, not the cocky bravado of the boy she had once known, but the red certainty of a man who had found his purpose. The Omnitrix on his arm pulsed with emerald light that seemed to flow rather than flash. "You found them," he said simply, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that momentarily stole her breath. "The celestial keys." Kai's hand went to her pack where 3 small artifacts were carefully wrapped in protective cloth. "I found unusual objects at 3 different sites that matched no known human civilization." "How did you?" "The Omnitrix can sense them now that the alignment has begun." Ben gestured toward a circular platform inset with materials she recognized from both Galvan and Petrosapian technology. "They're not just artifacts, Kai. They're components of a mechanism designed to elevate the Omnitrix to its final form." Skepticism flashed across Kai's features. Years of archaeological training had taught her to question extraordinary claims, even from trusted sources. "These pieces come from sites separated by thousands of miles and potentially thousands of years." "What makes you think they're connected to the Omnitrix?" Instead of answering verbally, Ben extended his arm. The Omnitrix emitted a soft pulse of energy that washed over her pack. In response, the artifacts inside began to glow with matching emerald light, visible even through their protective wrappings. "That's compelling evidence," Kai admitted, her scientific mind already racing with implications. She carefully removed the artifacts, a small crystalline pyramid, a disc with concentric rings that moved independently, and what appeared to be a metallic seed pod. "But Ben, these are priceless historical items. We can't just..." Her words faltered as the objects began to rise from her hands of their own accord, hovering in formation before slowly drifting toward the platform Ben had prepared. "They were never meant to remain separate," Ben explained, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to resonate at a frequency just below normal hearing. "They're returning to their original configuration now that the cosmic conditions are right." As the artifacts settled into precisely shaped recesses on the platform, Kai noticed something that sent a chill through her professional core. "The markings, they match the petroglyphs I've been cataloging across 3 continents." This isn't just alien technology, it's a deliberate message left for whoever found the pieces. Ben nodded, moving to stand beside her as the platform began to hum with increasing energy. A message left specifically for us, Kai. The ancient Galvan knew that eventually One would find the Omnitrix and master its basic functions. They knew that person would need a guide who understood Earth's hidden history. Their eyes met, and Kai felt a connection sparking between them that transcended their complicated past, a recognition of complementary purposes that had been set in motion millennia before either of them was born. The moment was shattered by an alarm T blared from multiple systems simultaneously. Gwen rushed to a monitoring station, her hands already glowing with magical energy. Something's happening in New Mexico, she reported tersely. Massive energy spike at coordinates. She paused, looking up at Kai with sudden understanding. At your dig site. Kai felt her blood run cold. The Guardian systems. If the artifacts were removed from their resting places, then whatever they were guarding is no longer contained. Ben finished, already moving toward the center of the laboratory where a more advanced version of the old rust bucket stood ready for immediate deployment. The celestial transformation will have to happen en route. Gwen, contact Grandpa Max and the plumbers. Tell them we have a Code Indigo situation. Kai had worked with the plumbers enough to know that Code Indigo meant alien technology activating on Earth with unknown but potentially catastrophic consequences. She quickly gathered her research materials and followed Ben toward the vehicle. I'm coming with you, she stated firmly, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Those ruins contain warnings about what the artifacts were containing. You'll need my translations. Ben paused at the vehicle's entrance, studying her with eyes that seemed to see far more than they once had. A slight smile curved his lips, not the cocky grin of his youth but something more appreciative. I was counting on it, he said simply, gesturing her aboard. No one knows this history better than you do. As they boarded the vehicle, neither noticed the small FLICKER of energy that passed from the arranged artifacts to the Omnitrix, initiating a transformation sequence that would soon change everything. The enhanced rust bucket sliced through the night SKY at speeds that would have been impossible for conventional aircraft, its advanced propulsion systems leaving barely a whisper in the air behind it. Inside, the command center hummed with activity as Ben, Kai, and Gwen coordinated their approach to the crisis unfolding in the New Mexico desert. Kai spread her research materials across the tactical table, digital scans of petroglyphs and artifact photos hovering in three-dimensional displays. According to these warnings, the artifacts were created to contain something called the void that hungers or possibly the consumer of stars depending on how you translate this particular glyph sequence. Cheery, Gwen commented dryly, her hands manipulating magical detection fields that extended miles beyond their current position. Whatever it is, it's putting out energy signatures unlike anything I've encountered. Not quite magical, not quite technological, almost like it exists partially in another dimension, Ben finished, his enhanced perception already beginning to sense the anomaly as they approached. The Omnitrix on his arm pulsed with increasing frequency, responding to the strange energies ahead. The artifacts weren't just containing it, they were stabilizing its dimensional frequency to keep it partially phased out of our reality. Kai studied Ben with quiet fascination. The change in him went beyond physical maturity or increased confidence. There was an awareness in his eyes that seemed to process information on multiple levels simultaneously. She had always been drawn to his alien forms, a professional interest that had sometimes complicated their personal interactions. But this was different. This was Ben himself evolving into something that bridged human and alien understanding in ways she had only theorized were possible. We're approaching the site, announced the ship's AI in a voice that sounded remarkably like Ben's late grandmother. Detecting massive subterranean movement and unusual radiation patterns consistent with trans-dimensional phasing. The main viewport shifted to display enhanced images of the desert below. What had been an unremarkable stretch of Badlands hours earlier pulsed with veins of eerie blue-green light that spread outward from Kai's excavation site like a viral infection through the landscape. It's beautiful, Gwen murmured, then caught herself. In a potentially world-ending sort of way. Ben moved to the weapons control station but bypassed the offensive systems in favor of deploying sensor drones. We need more information before we engage. If this entity exists partially outside our dimension, conventional attacks might just agitate it, or worse, anchor it more firmly in our reality. Kai felt a surge of respect at his restraint. The Ben she had known as a teenager would have transformed immediately and charged into battle. This measured approach spoke volumes about how he had matured as both a hero and a strategist. The drones are picking up movement, Gwen reported, her voice tightening. Something's emerging. On the viewscreen, the Earth bulged and then split open as something massive pushed its way to the surface. It bled nothing so much as a titanic hand composed of crystalline structures and pulsing organic matter that should not have been able to exist together. As it reached toward the night sky, the stars directly above it seemed to dim. Their light absorbed rather than merely blocked. It's feeding on stellar radiation, Ben observed, his enhanced perception allowing him to see energy flows invisible to normal human senses, converting it to matter to build itself a physical form in our dimension. Kai quickly sorted through her research materials. Here, the legends speak of a being that was cast out of its home dimension for attempting to consume its own star. The ancient Galvan found a way to trap it between realities using technology that eventually evolved into the Omnitrix's phase-shifting capabilities. The Omnitrix pulsed strongly now, almost as if responding to its own history being revealed. Ben looked down at it thoughtfully, then made a decision. I'm going to attempt the celestial transformation, he announced. The energies being released by that entity are matching the frequencies the Omnitrix needs for its evolution. If I can harness them instead of letting them disperse. That's insanely dangerous, Gwen protested. You'd be channeling unknown dimensional energies directly through yourself. It's not unknown energy, Kai interjected, her eyes wide with sudden understanding as she connected historical fragments into a coherent picture. It's the same energy the original celestial Omnitrix was designed to control. That's why the artifacts were left with Ning's systems, not just to contain the entity, but to ensure that when it eventually escaped, the Omnitrix would be present to harness its energy for transformation. Ben nodded, a grim smile playing at his lips. It wasn't an accident that the original Omnitrix found me, or that you discovered these artifacts just as the cosmic alignment approached. Azimuth and his ancestors planned for this moment across millennia. He moved toward the ship's exit hatch. Gwen, maintain the ship's position and be ready to extract us if this goes sideways. Kai, I need you with me, your knowledge of the artifact might be crucial if there are any additional steps to the transformation process. Kai quickly gathered her most relevant materials and moved to join him. Despite the danger, or perhaps because of she felt more alive than she had in years of careful archaeological work. This was history unfolding in real time, the culmination of mysteries she had spent her career pursuing. As they prepared to disembark, Ben turned to her with an expression that combined determination with something softer, something personal that made her heart beat faster despite the crisis surrounding them. Whatever happens down there, he said quietly, I'm glad you're the one here with me. No one else would understand what this means, not just for the Omnitrix, but for humanity's place in the cosmic order. Kai held his gaze steadily. We're about to rewrite history books that haven't even been conceived yet, she replied, a spark of adventure lighting her eyes. I wouldn't miss it for anything. They descended from the hovering craft on an energy platform that Gwen controlled from above, magical barriers shimmering around them as protection against the chaotic energies radiating from the emerging entity. The desert night had transformed into an alien landscape, sand crystallizing into glass-like structures where dimensional energies touched it, the air itself seeming to ripple with visible distortions where reality thinned. Ben stood with perfect balance despite the platform's descent, the Omnitrix pulsing in rhythm with the massive crystalline formations erupting from the earth below. Kai gripped the platform's railing with one hand while consulting her digital archives with the other, searching for any clue about how the transformation process should proceed. The entity is still partially phased, Ben observed as they neared the ground. It can't fully materialize without consuming more stellar energy. That gives us a window to act, but not much of one. As their platform took head down at the edge of the massive crater that had been Kai's excavation site, the full scale of what they faced became apparent. The crystalline hand they had observed from above was merely one pr. protrusion of a vast lattice-like structure that extended deep into the earth. Where it breached the surface, reality itself seemed to warp, creating visual distortions that made focusing difficult. There, Kai pointed toward what appeared to be an ancient stone altar at the center of the excavation, now revealed as part of a much larger complex that had been buried for millennia. That's the control nexus I was beginning to uncover. According to the translations, it's designed to communicate with the containment mechanism. Ben studied it, his enhanced perception seeing energy flows connecting the altar to both the crystalline entity and, strangely, to the Omnitrix itself. It's not just a control system, he realized aloud. It's a transfer mechanism. The ancient Galvan built it to channel the entity's dimensional energy safely if containment ever failed. He looked at Kai with newfound respect. Your excavation was more crucial than either of us realized. Without this interface, celestial transformation would have required direct contact with the entity itself. A tremor shook the ground as more of the crystalline structure emerged, reaching higher toward the night sky. Above it, stars began to dim in an expanding circle as the entity fed on their distant light. We need to move quickly, Kai urged, already heading toward the altar with the determined stride of someone accustomed to navigating treacherous archaeological sites. If it consumes enough energy to fully phase into our reality. Ben nodded grimly and followed, the Omnitrix pulsing more rapidly as they approached the ancient structure. The altar itself was composed of a material that resembled obsidian but contained flecks of metal that caught the moonlight like embedded stars. Intricate carvings covered its surface, some matching the symbols Kai had been studying for years, others in scripts so alien they seemed to shift and change as they watched. These contact points, Kai indicated 7. Depressions arranged in a constellation pattern on the altar's surface, should accommodate the Omnitrix according to the texts. But there's a warning here about the willing sacrifice that I haven't fully decoded. Ben studied the configuration, then looked at his Omnitrix. Without hesitation, he placed his arm on the altar, positioning the device directly at the center of the constellation pattern. Ben, Kai's voice held alarm. We don't know what sacrifice means in this context. It could be dangerous. He met her concerned gaze with steady confidence. Sometimes being a hero means taking calculated risks. Besides, a hint of his old smile flickered across his features. Calculated risks are kind of my specialty. Before Kai could protest further, the Omnitrix made contact with the altar's surface. Instantly, energy surged through the ancient stone, illuminating channels that had been invisible moments before. The constellation pattern glowed with increasing brightness, each point connecting to the Omnitrix with threads of light that resembled nothing so much as DNA strands made luminous. Ben's expression tightened as the energy flow intensified, clearly causing him discomfort. But he held his position with unwavering determination. The Omnitrix began to change, its surface flowing like liquid metal as new components materialized and integrated themselves into its structure. It's working, Kai exclaimed, alternating between watching the transformation and consulting her translations. The altar is drawing excess dimensional energy from the entity and channeling it into the Omnitrix, catalyzing its evolution just as the ancient texts described. Above them, the crystalline structure's growth slowed as its energy source was diverted. It seemed to sense the interference. Massive formations twisting with ponderous movement to reorient toward the altar and the humans who dared to thwart its emergence. Ben gritted his teeth as the energy flow intensified further. The entity is becoming aware of us, he managed, his voice strained. It's fighting the energy transfer. The ground beneath them trembled as crystalline spikes erupted from the earth, surrounding the altar in a closing circle. Kai quickly analyzed their pattern and movement. It's trying to disrupt the constellation alignment, she realized, already moving to intercept the encroaching formations. From her pack, she withdrew what appeared to be an ancient stone dagger, a family heirloom that gleamed with unexpected energy in the presence of the alien technology. With practiced precision, she struck at the base of the nearest crystal formation. The blade sliced through it with surprising effectiveness, causing the structure to collapse harmlessly away from the altar. Without pausing, she moved to the next formation, her movements displaying years of training in both archaeological field techniques and combat skills passed down through generations of her family. Kai, Ben called out, unable to move while maintaining the crucial connection between the Omnitrix and the altar. Be careful, Those formations are semi-sentient. As if confirming his warning, the crystal she had just struck began to reform. But now oriented directly toward her with unmistakable hostile intent. Multiple crystalline shards detached from the main structure and launched themselves at her like projectiles. Without the Omnitrix's alien forms to rely on, Ben was forced to watch as Kai faced this threat alone. But his concern proved unnecessary as she demonstrated why she had become one of Tis foremost xenoarchaeologists in such dangerous territory. Kai moved with fluid grace, her body executing a complex evasive pattern that seemed to anticipate the crystal's trajectories. Her ceremonial blade flashed in the moonlight as she deflected what she couldn't dodge, each movement precise and economical. Where Ben had once relied on overwhelming power, she displayed the perfect integration of skill and strategy. The Navajo weren't the only ones who preserved knowledge of fighting alien threats, she called back to him with fierce pride evident in her voice. My ancestors have been guardians of these sites for generations. Even as she fought, she maintained awareness of the larger situation. The transformation is almost complete, she observed between defensive maneuvers. Entity is losing cohesion as more of its energy is channeled into the Omnitrix. She was right. The massive crystalline structure that had been reaching toward the stars now showed signs of instability. Portions crumbling and dissolving back into dimensional flux. Above them, the darkened patch of sky began to brighten again as stars reappeared. At the altar, the Omnitrix's transformation entered its final phase. The device expanded up Ben's arm, forming an elegant gauntlet of shifting metallic components interwoven with crystalline elements that pulsed with internal light. Its color shifted from the familiar green to a deeper emerald with swirling patterns that resembled galaxies in miniature. Ben's expression, which had been tightened with pain, suddenly relaxed into wonder. His eyes widened as new awareness flooded his consciousness, awareness of possibilities and potentials that the original Omnitrix had only hinted at. It's done, he breathed, slowly lifting his arm from the altar as the energy flow stabilized. The newly transformed celestial Omnitrix hummed with power that seemed to resonate with the fabric of reality itself. I can feel it, connection to every species in the Omnitrix database. But deeper now, not just their DNA but their evolutionary history, their potential futures. Kai dispatched the last of the aggressive crystal formations and hurried to his side. Her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding even her combat vigilance. Can you control it? The text suggested that the celestial Omnitrix would grant powers beyond mere transformation. Ben nodded slowly, his consciousness still adjusting to the device's expanded capabilities. It's not just about transforming into different aliens anymore. I can access their abilities more selectively. Combine aspects from multiple species. He looked up at the entity, now visibly weakening as its dimensional anchor dissolved. And I can manipulate the barriers between dimensions themselves. With newfound confidence, he raised the celestial Omnitrix toward the writhing crystalline mass. Time to send our visitor back where it belongs, with safeguards that will last considerably longer than the last set. The Omnitrix pulsed once, and reality seemed to bend around the entity. A rift opened, not the chaotic tear through which it had been partially emerging, but a controlled portal. Glowed with the same galaxy-like patterns visible within the Omnitrix itself. I'm reconfiguring its dimensional frequency, Ben explained, his voice calm despite the enormous energies he was manipulating. Instead of trying to contain it between dimensions, I'm shifting it to a pocket dimension where it can exist without threatening other realities, and without starving from lack of energy. I watched in astonishment as the massive crystalline structure was drawn inexorably toward the portal, folding in upon itself as it passed through the dimensional boundary. Within minutes, what had Raiden to become a planetary catastrophe was contained with an elegance that far surpassed the ancient Galvan's original solution. As the last traces of the entity vanished and the portal sealed itself with a final pulse of energy, Ben lowered his arm and turned to Kai. The celestial Omnitrix settled into a less active state, though its galaxy-like patterns continued to swirl beneath its surface. That, Kai stated with professional admiration, was considerably more effective than my standard archaeological containment procedures. A grin spread across Ben's face, one that combined his youthful enthusiasm with his newly enhanced perception. I don't know, he replied, glancing meaningfully at the ceremonial blade she still held and the dispatched crystal formations surrounding them. Your methods seemed pretty effective from where I was standing. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the years of complicated history between them seemed to realign into something new, something beweal. On mutual respect and shared purpose rather than the misunderstandings of their younger selves. The moment was interrupted by Gwen's voice from above. If you two are done saving the world and making eyes at each other. We're picking up multiple incoming signals. Word of this event has reached the interstellar community, and they're very interested in what just happened. Ben's expression shifted to one of contemplative focus. The celestial Omnitrix was always meant to be more than a weapon, he said, both to Kai and to himself. It's a nexus point for different species, different realities. He looked up at the stars, now fully visible again in the clear desert night. I think Earth just became the center of something much bigger than we imagined. Kai followed his gaze upward, her archaeologist's mind already racing with the implications for humanity's understanding of its own history and future. Good thing you've got someone around who specializes in interpreting first contact situations. She observed with quiet confidence. Ben turned to her, appreciation evident in his expression. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have by my side for whatever comes next. As the enhanced rust bucket descended to retrieve them, neither could ignore the sense that they stood at the threshold of a new chapter, not just in their own complicated relationship, but in humanity's place among the stars. The aftermath of the New Mexico incident transformed Earth's relationship with the wider universe more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. Within days, diplomatic vessels from a dozen different worlds arrived in Earth orbit, seeking audience with the wielder of the celestial Omnitrix. The governments of Earth, already accustomed to alien presence thanks to years of plumber operations, found themselves suddenly thrust into the role of interstellar diplomatic hub. Ben Tennyson's warehouse laboratory, once a private sanctuary, became the unofficial center for these new relations. Expanded and enhanced with both alien and human technologies, it now housed representatives from various worlds alongside the growing team of Earth specialists needed to navigate this new reality. Kai Green had established her office in what had once been a storage area, now converted into a research center filled with artifacts, translations, and historical records from across both Earth and alien civilizations. She had become Earth's de facto expert on interpreting the historical context of interspecies relations, a role that had unexpectedly emerged from her archaeological background. 3 weeks after the transformation of the Omnitrix, she was deep in conversation with a holographic representation of ancient Galvan text when Ben entered her workspace. He moved differently now, with a fluid grace that suggested his consciousness operated on multiple levels simultaneously, yet still with the distinctly human mannerisms that kept him grounded in his own identity. The Petrosa-Pian delegation is requesting historical context for their species' early interactions with humans, he announced without preamble. Apparently there are cave paintings in Australia that they believe depict their ancestors. Kai looked up from her work, tucking a strand of black hair behind her ear. The Kimberley region formations. I've been studying those for years, never made the connection to Petrosapians. But it makes sense given the crystalline structures depicted in the art. She rose and moved to a large interactive display where she called up images of the cave paintings in question. Their timing is interesting, though. These particular paintings date from approximately the same era as our New Mexico site. It suggests a coordinated alien presence on Earth during that period, not just isolated visits. Ben moved beside her, studying the images with the enhanced perception granted by the celestial Omnitrix. Not coincidence, he observed quietly. Preparation. The ancient Van were establishing backup systems across the planet in case the New Mexico containment failed. They recruited other species to help. Kai glanced at him, still adjusting to how his thought process had accelerated since the transformation. Where she meticulously pieced together historical narratives from fragments of evidence, he increasingly perceived connections directly through the Omnitrix's expanded database. That changes our understanding of early human development, she noted, professional excitement evident in her voice. If multiple alien species were actively involved on Earth during that period, they may have influenced human evolution more directly than we realized. Ben's expression shifted to one of thoughtful concern, which raises questions about how much to reveal to the general public, and how quickly. People are still adjusting to Earth's new status as a diplomatic hub. Learning that human development itself may have been guided by alien intervention could be destabilizing, Kai finished. Understanding the implications, she had spent her career pursuing truth regardless of consequences, but her experiences with Ben had taught her that timing and context mattered when revealing world-changing information. A comfortable silence fell between them as they both considered the broader implications. It was broken by a soft alert from the celestial Omnitrix, which pulsed with subtle light patterns. Another dimensional fluctuation, Kai asked, already reaching for her field equipment. The weeks since the New Mexico incident had seen several small anomalies as the universe adjusted to the presence of the celestial Omnitrix. Ben shook his head, a slight smile playing at his lips. Actually, it's detecting a familiar energy signature entering Earth's atmosphere. Someone I think you'll want to meet, the caretaker of the original celestial Omnitrix project. Kai's eyes widened with scholarly excitement. A surviving member of the ancient Galvan expedition. Not exactly. She's considerably younger than that, though still a few centuries older than us. Ben gestured toward the main chamber where diplomatic meetings were held. Xylene has been monitoring Earth from a distance ever since she first brought the Omnitrix to our solar system. Apparently, the celestial transformation has finally given her a reason to return in person. As He walked together toward the central chamber, Kai found herself studying Ben with renewed curiosity. Each day revealed new aspects of how the celestial Omnitrix had changed him, not by diminishing his humanity, but by expanding his perspective to encompass something greater while remaining distinctly himself. You knew she was coming before the alert, didn't you? She asked perceptively. Ben nodded, his expression conveying both wonder and growing comfort with his enhanced abilities. The celestial Omnitrix doesn't just transform DNA anymore. It creates connections across space and time. Adds of possibility that I'm learning to perceive. He looked at her directly, appreciation evident in his gaze. Some connections are stronger than others. The statement hung between them, laden with meaning that extended beyond their professional collaboration. Before Kai could respond, they reached the central chamber where several plumbers were already preparing for the arrival of the mysterious Xylene. Gwen approached them, her expression suggesting skepticism mixed with curiosity. So this Xylene is the one who originally sent the Omnitrix to Earth. Why haven't we heard about her before now? Her mission has always been classified at the highest levels, Ben explained. She's a guardian of nexus points, cosmic locations where multiple realities intersect. Earth became one such in the moment the celestial Omnitrix activated. A controlled flash of light interrupted further explanation as a teleportation beam materialized in the center of the chamber. The figure that appeared was clearly female but unmistakably alien, tall and slender with bluish skin, three-fingered hands, and a cranial structure that suggested significant mental capacities beyond human norm. She carried herself with the poised confidence of someone accustomed to moving between worlds both literally and figuratively. Her eyes, large, luminous, and without pupils, immediately focused on Ben and the celestial Omnitrix. A subtle expression that might have been satisfaction crossed her features. Benjamin Tennyson, she greeted, her voice melodious yet carrying undertones that seemed to resonate at unusual frequencies. You have exceeded even Azimuth's expectations. The celestial transformation was not predicted to occur for at least another human generation. Ben stepped forward, inclining his head in a gesture of respect that somehow managed to convey equality rather than subordination. Xylene of the Uxorite Guardians. Your guidance was instrumental, even at a distance. Xylene's gaze shifted to Kai, studying her with evident interest. And you must be Kai Green. Your discovery of the anchor points was equally crucial to the transformation's success. She moved forward with fluid grace, extending a three-fingered hand in what appeared to be a practiced approximation of human greeting customs. Your ancestors protected knowledge that even the plumbers were not permitted to access. You honor their legacy. Kai accepted the gesture, her archaeological training allowing her to adapt easily to alien customs. It's an honor to meet you. Your species' role in early Earth visitation is barely documented in our records. With good reason, Xylene replied, her attention returning to the celestial Omnitrix. Earth's development needed to proceed with minimal interference until E-right wielder for the Omnitrix emerged naturally. Too much knowledge too soon would have altered your evolutionary path. She moved closer to Ben, examining the transformed device with evident fascination. The celestial configuration has stabilized perfectly. You've already contained a Class 9 dimensional entity and established preliminary connections with 17 potential nexus points across 3 galaxies. Approval colored her tone. Most impressive for a species as young as yours. I had help, Ben stated simply, glancing toward Kai with unspoken meaning. Xylene noted the EXCH. Ainge with what might have been amusement. Yes, the success of the Omnitrix has always depended on cooperation between species. That understanding is precisely why you were chosen, Benjamin. She Ned to address the wider group that had gathered. Earth now stands at a critical juncture. The activation of the celestial Omnitrix has placed your planet at the center of cosmic attention, both beneficial and potentially dangerous. Multiple factions will seek influence over its power. Gwen stepped forward, her diplomatic experience evident in her direct approach. And your faction, what do the Uxorite Guardians want with the celestial Omnitrix? Xylene's expression shifted to one of measured respect at the directness of the question. Balance, she answered simply. The Omnitrix was never meant to belong to any single faction or serve any single purpose. It is a nexus of possibility, a means for different species to understand each other on the most fundamental level. She focused on Ben again. We Guardians exist to ensure that such nexus points remain open to all worthy species while protected from those who would exploit them. I am here to offer guidance, not control. Before anyone could respond to this declaration, alarms blared throughout the facility. Screens activated automatically, displaying multiple unidentified craft entering Earth's atmosphere at high speed. Speaking of those who would exploit power, Xylene observed calmly, though her posture shifted subtly to a more alert stance. It appears the collective has detected the celestial activation more quickly than anticipated. The collective, Kai questioned, already moving to access her historical databases. A coalition of species united by fear of evolutionary advancement, Xylene explained. They believe that cosmic balance requires suppressing any technology that might elevate lesser species too quickly. Her gaze fixed on the celestial Omnitrix. They have opposed the Omnitrix project since its inception. Ben's expression hardened with resolve, the Omnitrix pulsing in response to his heightened focus. Then it's time they understood that Earth is not a testing ground to be contained or controlled. He turned to Gwen. Activate planetary defense protocols. Diplomatic measures first, but be prepared for less friendly responses. To Kai, he added, we need historical context on these species, any past encounters. Cultural pressure points, negotiation tactics. Kai was already accessing her databases, professional focus overriding any concern. On it, initial scans match vessel configurations from at least 3 different civilizations mentioned in ancient warning texts. As the chamber erupted into organized activity, Xylene observed Ben with growing approval. Not only was he adapting to the celestial Omnitrix's capabilities with remarkable speed, but he was integrating them with distinctly human approaches to problem solving, delegating where appropriate, utilizing diverse expertise, and maintaining focus on diplomatic solutions even while preparing for conflict. Perhaps, she mused quietly to herself as Ben coordinated Earth's response to this first major challenge of its new cosmic status. Azimuth was right about humans after all. The celestial Omnitrix pulsed with increasing energy as it responded to both the approaching threat and its wielder's resolute determination. Earth's next chapter in the cosmic community was beginning, and at its center stood 3 figures whose connections transcended their diverse origins: a human transformed by alien technology, an archaeologist who bridged ancient wisdom with present crisis, and a guardian whose centuries of experience were now committed to their success. Whatever came next, the universe would never be the same. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Quantum Resonance. The Princeton University Quantum Physics Laboratory hummed with activity despite the late hour. Most researchers had departed hours ago, leaving the vast space to its solitary occupant. Holographic equations hung suspended in the air, mathematical constructs so complex they resembled abstract art more than scientific notation. At their center stood Julie Yamamoto, her features illuminated by the blue glow of projected data streams. The convergence patterns are accelerating, she murmured to herself, fingers dancing through the holog. Rafik interface to adjust variables in her simulation. Quantum entanglement across previously isolated systems, increasing exponentially since the New Mexico event. At 24, Julie had Evo. LVED far beyond the tennis-playing teenager she had once been. Her athletic grace remained, but now served a mind that had rocketed her to the forefront of theoretical physics. Her short black hair was cut in a precise bob that framed features sharpened by years of intense intellectual focus. She wore simple dark clothing that seemed chosen specifically to avoid distracting from her work rather than for any aesthetic consideration. The laboratory door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Dr. Emil Hamilton, her research advisor, entered with an expression that mixed concern with reluctant admiration. "Julie, it's 2 a.m. Even brilliant minds need rest." She didn't look away from her calculations. "The anomalies are intensifying. 3 weeks ago, quantum fluctuations were barely detectable. Now, they're registering on standard equipment." Her hands made a sweeping gesture, expanding one particular equation. Something fundamentally changed in the universe's baseline quantum signature. These patterns suggest deliberate reconfiguration rather than natural evolution. Dr. Hamilton approached cautiously, studying the complex mathematical models with growing concern. "Your theories about quantum communication between parallel realities were considered radical 6 months ago. Now they're observable phenomena," Julie finished, finally turning to face him. Her dark eyes reflected the determination that had propelled her from undergraduate student to quantum research fellow in record time. And the epicenter of these fluctuations isn't some distant cosmic event. It's Bellwood. A tense silence followed as Dr. Hamilton absorbed the implications. Bellwood was known in scientific circles as a hotspot for unusual phenomena, and as the home of Ben Tennyson, whose alien fighting activities had become impossible to keep secret from the scientific community despite governmental efforts. "You're certain?" he asked quietly. Julie nodded once, her expression resolute. "The quantum signature matches theoretical models I developed based on," she hesitated fractionally, "previous exposure to alien technology. Something is happening there that's affecting fundamental reality across multiple dimensions. And it's accelerating." She turned back to her equations, making minute adjustments that caused cascading changes throughout the system. "I've been offered a position with a research group in Bellwood. I'm accepting it effective immediately." Dr. Hamilton's concern deepened. "Julie, your work here is groundbreaking. The university is prepared to grant you full tenure. E-track professorship, the youngest in Princeton's history. Whatever's happening in Bellwood, other scientists can." "No," she interrupted with quiet certainty. "They can't. Not with the same perspective I have." She began systematically saving her work and transferring files to her personal database. "This isn't about career advancement, drive. Hamilton. The quantum signatures I'm detecting suggest potential reality destabilization beyond anything in theoretical models. Someone needs to address it before theoretical becomes catastrophic." She didn't add what both of them knew, that her history with Ben Tennyson gave her unique insights into alien technology that no other physicist possessed. Her time dating the wielder of the Omnitrix had exposed her to phenomena that most scientists still considered impossible. Dr. Hamilton sighed, recognizing the futility of further argument. "At least promise you'll continue publishing your findings. The scientific community needs minds like yours, especially if what you're detecting proves accurate." Julie's expression softened slightly. "I'll publish what I can. Some of this may prove classified." She closed her main workstation with a decisive gesture. "My transport leaves in 3 hours. I've already packed my essential equipment." As she gathered her materials, a small notification appeared on her private communication device. The message was brief. From a secure plumber channel she still maintained access to despite her years away from direct involvement with alien affairs. "Quantum fluctuations detected near Bellwood University. Intensity increasing. Pattern matches your theoretical models. Your expertise requested. GT." Julie allowed herself a moment of vindication. Gwen Tennyson wouldn't have reached out unless the situation was serious. Her decision to return was validated before she'd even left Princeton. With renewed purpose, she completed her preparations. Whatever was happening in Bellwood transcended her complicated personal history with Ben. Science demanded she return to where it all began, where her understanding of reality had first expanded beyond conventional physics into something far more extraordinary. The universe was changing. Julie Yamamoto intended to understand how, and why. Bellwood University's new Applied Physics Center stood as a testament to how much the town had changed in recent years. Once an unremarkable suburban community, Bellwood had transformed into a hub for advanced research, much of it covertly focused on understanding and adapting alien technologies that Earth had been increasingly exposed to. Julie approached the gleaming facility with measured steps, observing how security protocols subtly integrated both human and alien defensive technologies. Her credentials granted her immediate access. Though she noted the molecular scanner that verified her DNA against recorded patterns, technology that hadn't been publicly acknowledged yet. Inside, the Centra L research area buzzed with controlled urgency. Screens displayed real-time measurements of quantum fluctuations occurring throughout Bellwood, their epicenter clearly located near Ben's expanded headquarters. Scientists and disguised plumber agents worked side by side, the distinction between them increasingly blurred as Earth adapted to its new cosmic reality. Gwen Tennyson stood at the center of operations, her presence commanding respect from both scientific and security personnel. Her manipulation of magical energies had become more refined over the years, now frequently indistinguishable from advanced technology to untrained observers. She looked up as Julie entered, relief briefly softening her focused expression. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said, extending her hand in greeting. The simple gesture carried the weight of their shared history, sometimes allies, sometimes competitors for Ben's attention, always maintaining mutual respect. "The fluctuations are intensifying faster than our models predicted." Julie accepted the handshake with professional courtesy. "Your message suggested they match my theoretical framework for cross-dimensional quantum entanglement. I'll need to see the raw data." Gwen nodded, leading her toward a secured research station. It started 3 weeks ago after Ben activated the celestial Omnitrix. Initially, the effects were limited to standard spatial distortions we've seen before with Omnitrix transformations. But 2 days ago, something changed. She brought up a holographic display showing Bellwood and surrounding areas overlaid with energy readings. The quantum fluctuations began exhibiting organized patterns, almost like programming code embedded in the fabric of reality itself. "Our scientists can measure it but can't interpret the patterns." Julie studied the display intently, her mind immediately recognizing aspects of the quantum signature that she had theorized but never expected to observe directly. "It's a resonance cascade," she murmured, fingers already manipulating the interface to isolate specific pattern sequences. "The celestial Omnitrix isn't just affecting our current reality, it's establishing quantum connections with parallel timelines." Gwen watched as Julie effortlessly navigated the complex data, reorganizing it into patterns that suddenly revealed clear structure where chaos had seemed to reign. "Is it dangerous?" she asked directly, prioritizing practical concerns over theoretical implications. Julie's expression remained professionally neutral, but her rapid analysis betrayed underlying concern. "Potentially catastrophic," she answered candidly. "These patterns suggest reality barriers thinning between dimensions. If the resonance continues to amplify at current rates," she performed a quick calculation, "we could see physical manifestations of timeline bleed through within 72 hours. Full-dimensional collapse within 2 weeks." Before Gwen could respond, an alert sounded throughout the facility. The holographic display automatically shifted to show a new energy spike occurring near downtown Bellwood, the first physical manifestation of the quantum disturbances. Timelines accelerated, Julie observed with clinical detachment that masked her internal alarm. "We need to see it firsthand. And I need to speak with Ben. The celestial Omnitrix is both the cause and potentially the only solution." Gwen nodded, already activating her communication link. "Ben's en route to the disturbance now. I'll arrange transport for us." She hesitated, then added with careful neutrality. "He's different since the transformation, Julie. The celestial Omnitrix has changed him in ways we're still trying to understand." Julie gathered her equipment with efficient movements. "So am I," she replied simply. 5 years at Princeton wasn't just about collecting degrees. As they prepared to depart, Julie caught her reflection in a darkened screen, her composed expression revealing nothing of the complex emotions swirling beneath. She had left Bellwood and Ben behind to pursue her scientific ambitions, believing their paths had permanently diverged. Now cosmic forces had drawn them back together at precisely the moment when her specialized knowledge might prove essential. Whatever personal complications awaited, the physicist in her couldn't deny a fundamental truth. The universe operated on principles of balance and symmetry. Perhaps her return was not coincidence but necessity, a quantum entanglement of human relationships mirroring the cosmic connections now threatening reality itself. Downtown Bellwood had evolved significantly in the years since Julie had left. Sleek architectural designs incorporating subtle alien aesthetic influences stood alongside traditional Earth structures, reflecting humanity's gradual integration with wider galactic society. Under normal circumstances, she would have found the sociological implications fascinating. Today, however, her attention was fixed entirely on the shimmering distortion that hovered 10 feet above Main Street's Central Plaza. The anomaly resembled heat distortion but moved with purpose, its bow underease pulsing in patterns that matched the quantum signatures she had analyzed at the research facility. A crowd had gathered at a safe distance, held back by plumber agents in civilian disguise. The public had grown accustomed to unusual phenomena in Bellwood, but their expressions still reflected appropriate concern at this new manifestation. Julie approached the perimeter, her specialized equipment already gathering data. Gwen walked beside her, magical energy crackling subtly around her hands as she maintained readiness to contain any escalation. The quantum signature is intensifying, Julie reported, studying her readings with growing concern. It's establishing a stable connection between dimensional barriers. In simple terms, it's becoming a window, or potentially a door, between realities. Can you determine which reality it's connecting to? Gwen asked, her tactical mind immediately assessing potential threats. Julie adjusted her equipment, frowning at the results. That's what's concerning. It's not connecting to a single alternate timeline. It's cycling through multiple realities in sequence, like it's searching for something specific. Before Gwen could respond, a familiar voice called from above. Or someone specific. Julie looked up to see Ben descending on what appeared to be a self-generated energy platform, a capability she didn't recognize from any of his previous alien forms. The celestial Omnitrix on his arm pulsed with swirling patterns that eerily matched the quantum disturbance's fluctuations. Her scientific mind immediately began cataloging the differences in his appearance since she'd last seen him. Physically, he had matured into his mid-20s with an athletic build that suggested constant training. But more striking was the quality of awareness in his eyes, a depth of perception that seemed to process multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Ben landed smoothly beside them, the energy platform dissipating into particles that were reabsorbed by the Omnitrix. His gaze met Julie's with recognition that transcended their years apart. "You predicted this," he stated rather than asked, nodding toward her equipment. "Your res. Urch at Princeton about quantum entanglement across parallel timelines." Julie maintained professional composure despite her surprise that he had followed her academic work. "Theoretical models only. Nothing suggested practical manifestation on this scale was possible without," she gestured toward the celestial Omnitrix. "Without unprecedented energy manipulation at the quantum level." A hint the old Ben, the one she had known before her departure, flickered in his smile. "Good to see you too, Julie." Before she could formulate a response that balanced professional distance with acknowledged history, the quantum disturbance pulsed violently. Its swirling patterns accelerated, and the air around it began to crackle with displacement energy. "It's stabilizing on a single reality," Julie warned, reading the rapidly changing data from her instruments. "Something's coming through." Ben stepped forward, the celestial Omnitrix glowing with increased intensity. "Not something," he corrected, his enhanced perception already detecting what her instruments were only beginning to measure. "Someone. Multiple someones. All with quantum signatures that partially match our own." The distortion expanded suddenly, its center transforming from shimmering haze to a window-like opening. Through it, they could see what appeared to be an alternate version of Bellwood, darker, damaged by what looked like recent conflict. And moving toward the opening from the other side came figures that struck Julie with immediate cognitive dissonance. It was them, alternate versions of themselves. A harder, battle-worn Ben with a mechanical arm that incorporated a damaged Omnitrix. A Gwen whose magical aura burned with darker energy. And, is that me? Julie whispered, scientific detachment momentar. Eyely failing as she observed her doppelganger, a version of herself with militaristic bearing and visible cybernetic enhancements. Variant timelines, Ben confirmed, the celestial Omnitrix pulsing in response to the proximity of its alternate version. A reality where different choices were made, different paths taken. The alternate Ben noticed them through the opening, his expression shifting from determination to shock. He raised his mechanical arm, the damaged Omnitrix flaring with unstable energy as he shouted something to his companions. They think we're causing this, Gwen realized aloud, reading the alternate team's defensive positioning. From their perspective, we're the dimensional invaders. The quantum window between realities widened further, now large enough for physical passage. The alternate Julie began calibrating what appeared to be a dimensional stabilizer, attempting to secure the connection between realities rather than close it. We need to establish communication before this escalates, Ben stated, stepping closer to the boundary. The celestial Omnitrix responded to his intent, projecting a field of translucent energy that began to resonate at frequencies matching the dimensional barrier. Julie moved quickly to his side, her equipment interfacing with the energy field. If you're attempting to create a stable translation field across dimensional frequencies, you'll need to modulate the quantum harmonics to match both realities simultaneously. Ben glanced at her with appreciation for her immediate understanding. Exactly what I was thinking. The Omnitrix can generate the field, but I'm still learning to fine-tune cross-dimensional communications. Their hands moved in parallel, her adjusting scientific instruments while he manipulated the Omnitrix's controls with practiced precision. The synchronicity of their movements reflected years of past partnership despite their time apart, an unconscious harmony that transcended their conscious minds. Calibration complete, Julie announced as their adjustments aligned perfectly. Translation field stabilizing. The energy between the worlds shimmered, then clarified like focusing a lens. Sound now traveled through the opening as well as visual information. The alternate Ben's voice became audible mid-sentence. Dimensional collapse on our side. We tracked the quantum signature to this coordinate. Our reality is breaking down. We need asylum. The alternate Julie stepped forward, her cybernetic eye scanning their reality with visible data streaming across its surface. Quantum Street. Ability at 87% compared to our 34% and rapidly declining. Their timeline is viable. She focused directly on her counterpart. You're the physicist here too. You understand what's happening to our reality. Julie processed this confirmation of parallel development with scientific fascination despite the crisis. Dimensional resonance cascade, she responded, professional training overriding the strangeness of addressing herself. Your reality is experiencing accelerated entropy due to quantum instability. Caused by what? Ben asked, addressing their counterparts directly. The alternate Ben's expression darkened. The Chronosapiens. They attempted to erase our timeline after we refused to surrender the Omnitrix technology. We've been fighting a losing battle against temporal erasure for months. Gwen stepped forward, magical energy ready at her fingertips. How do we know this isn't an invasion strategy? You could be using our sympathy to establish a beachhead in our reality. Alternate Gwen, her hair cropped short and a scar running across her right cheek, met her counterpart's suspicion with bitter understanding. Because we tried that strategy in 7 other realities and it failed every time. We're out of options and almost out of time. She gestured to the visible destruction behind them. Our Bellwood has maybe 12 hours before complete quantum collapse. Julie's instruments confirmed the readings. Their reality was indeed in advanced stages of dimensional decay, the very fabric of their universe unraveling at the quantum level. They're telling the truth, she confirmed, showing her readings to Ben and Gwen. But bringing them through could accelerate the quantum instability in our reality. Their temporal decay could prove contagious at the quantum level. Ben studied the data, then looked back at their desperate counterparts. In that moment, Julie recognized the essence of who he had always been beneath the transformations and power, someone who could turn away from others in need. Regardless of risk, the celestial Omnitrix should be able to contain the quantum instability, he decided. We'll establish a quarantine zone and bring them through. The alternate Ben's expression shifted to cautious hope, an expression strikingly familiar despite the battle-hardened differences in his appearance. How many can you accommodate? We have 17 survivors. Ben glanced at Julie, silently asking for scientific assessment rather than merely giving a compassionate answer. The wordless communication between them functioned as seamlessly as it had years ago. The quarantine field I can establish with current equipment could safely contain 20 individuals without risking dimensional contamination, she answered precisely. But I'll need a more permanent solution within 48 hours before quantum entanglement begins affecting our reality. Ben nodded decisively. Bring your people through. We'll establish the quarantine at headquarters where we have better equipment and more space. As their counterparts began organizing their group for transfer, Gwen pulled Ben and Julie aside, her expression troubled. Are we sure about this? The threat to our reality is theoretical at this point. Bringing them through makes it concrete. The threat became concrete the moment the dimensional window opened, Julie countered. My readings indicate the quantum disturbance was already affecting our reality before they appeared. Their presence or absence doesn't change our fundamental problem, just adds urgency to solving it. Ben's expression revealed his growing comfort with making decisions that balanced human compassion against cosmic implications. Julie's right, and they have knowledge about what caused their reality's collapse that could be crucial to preventing the same here. He looked toward the window where their counterparts were helping injured companions prepare for transit. Besides, they're us. In their position, we'd do the same thing. Gwen relented with a nod that acknowledged both the practical and ethical reasoning. I'll coordinate with headquarters to prepare the quarantine zone. But we maintain security protocols until we're certain of all variables. As Gwen moved away to make arrangements, Julie found herself momentarily alone with Ben, a situation that her analytical mind had calculated was statistically inevitable but that her emotional processes hadn't fully prepared for. Ben turned to her, his expression softening from crisis management to something more personal. Your research predicted this possibility years ago. I read your papers. Julie raised an eyebrow, genuine surprise breaking through her professional demeanor. You followed my academic work. A smile that reminded her of their shared past crossed his features. Just because our paths diverged doesn't mean I stopped caring about where yours led. The smile faded into something more serious. Your theories about quantum entanglement between parallel timelines were crucial to my understanding of what the celestial Omnitrix was capable of. Before she could formulate a response that navigated the complex territory between their past relationship and current crisis, the alternate Julie approached the dimensional boundary, her cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the energy field's light. Time is critical, her counterpart stated without preamble. The quantum decay rate is accelerating on our side. We need to complete transfer immediately. Professional focus immediately reasserted itself as Julie adjusted her equipment to monitor the boundary's stability during transfer. Yet as she worked, part of her mind continued processing Ben's revelation that their intellectual paths had remained connected. Despite their personal separation, a quantum entanglement of its own kind that had persisted across time and distance. The expanded headquarters that now served as Ben's base of operations had been specifically designed to accommodate unusual circumstances, but hosting refugees from a collapsing parallel reality tested even its advanced capabilities. The main research bay had been quickly converted to a quantum quarantine zone. Specialized energy fields containing the dimensional resonance that surrounded the visitors. Julie worked at a monitoring station just outside the containment field, analyzing data streams from both the refugees and the increasingly unstable quantum fluctuations throughout Bellwood. The alternate Julie worked at a similar station inside the containment zone, air movements occasionally synchronizing in unconscious mirroring that observers found unsettling. The quantum degradation signatures match exactly, Julie reported as Ben approached her station. Quote, their reality began experiencing anomalies approximately 3 weeks ago, the same time the celestial Omnitrix activated here. Ben studied the comparative data with the enhanced perception granted by the transformed device. Not coincidence, he concluded. The celestial transformation created quantum ripples across multiple timelines. Their reality was already unstable, so the ripples accelerated their collapse. And ours could follow the same pattern if we don't resolve the dimensional resonance, Julie added, bringing up projection models that showed accelerating decay rates. The quantum Entanglement between our realities is strengthening. We have perhaps 72 hours before permanent entanglement occurs. Inside the containment field, the alternate Ben observed their discussion with analytical interest. His mechanical arm, which incorporated elements of a damaged Omnitrix, occasionally emitted pulses of energy that matched the celestial Omnitrix's patterns, further evidence of their quantum connection. Your transformation to the celestial form was controlled, he called out, approaching the barrier between them. Ours was forced, weaponized by the Chronosapiens during their initial attack. The dimensional backlash destabilized our entire timeline. Ben moved closer to the barrier, studying his counterpart with both scientific and personal interest. You said the Chronosapiens targeted your reality specifically. Why? The alternate Ben's expression hardened. Because in our timeline, I completed Azimuth's final project, integrating the Omnitrix with human DNA at the evolutionary level. We were creating a bridge species between humans and the galactic community. His gaze shifted to his mechanical arm. Some found the idea of humanity advancing that quickly, threatening. Julie's scientific mind immediately grasped the implications. You were accelerating human evolution through controlled integration of alien DNA. The Chronosapiens saw this as a timeline violation because it fundamentally altered humanity's developmental path. Which means the same forces might target our reality now that the celestial Omnitrix has activated, Ben concluded, the device on his arm pulsing as if in response to the potential threat. The alternate Julie joined her counterpart at the barrier, cybernetic eye scanning continuous data streams. Our timeline was 17D. AYS ahead of yours in the developmental sequence. If the pattern holds, you can expect the first Chronosapien temporal probes within 48 hours. Julie processed this information with scientific detachment that masked her internal concern. That aligns with our projections for when quantum entanglement reaches critical threshold. The dimensional weakening would allow temporal incursions with minimal energy expenditure on their part. Then we have two imperatives, Ben stated, decision crystallizing from the available data. Stabilize the quantum fluctuations to prevent further dimensional weakening. And prepare defenses against potential Chronosapien intervention. He turned to Julie. Your expertise in quantum physics is essential for the first objective. Can you develop a method to dampen the resonance cascade? Julie was already modeling potential solutions. Theoretically, yes, the celestial Omnitrix appears to be the focal point of the quantum disturbance. If we can modify its dimensional resonance frequency to destructively interfere with the cascade pattern, you'd need direct access to the Omnitrix's quantum core, the alternate Julie interjected, her tone suggesting professional challenge rather than discouragement. Our attempts to modify our version failed because the mechanical interface was too imprecise. Julie studied her counterpart with scientific curiosity, overlaying the existential strangeness of the situation. Despite their identical genetic origin, their divergent experiences had clearly shaped them into distinct individuals. The alternate Julie's cybernetic enhancements and military bearing suggested a life where scientific expertise had been weaponized by necessity. Our circumstances differ in a crucial aspect, she responded, turning back to Ben. The celestial transformation here was controlled and complete, and I've spent the last 5 years developing theoretical frameworks specifically applicable to this situation. Ben nodded, understanding the unspoken request in her statement. You need direct interface with the Omnitrix to implement your solution. Yes, the quantum core must be recalibrated at frequencies that only ECI-leased equipment can generate with sufficient precision. Julie brought up technical specifications on her display. I'll need to design an interface mechanism that can communicate with the Omnitrix at the quantum level without disrupting its primary functions. The alternate Ben exchanged glances with his version of Julie, a wordless communication that reflected years of partnership through crisis. We attempted something similar, he said gravely. The quantum feedback nearly killed our Julie. That's why she has the cybernetic enhancements now, to survive direct quantum interface. A tense silence followed this revelation. Ben studied both Julie's, then looked down at the celestial Omnitrix with newfound concern. Is there no safer alternative? Julie continued working on her calculations. Professional focus unwavering despite the revealed risk. The alternate solution would be to allow the dimensional decay to progress until the Chronosapiens appear, then attempt to capture their temporal technology to reverse the cascade. She looked up, her expression reflecting the scientist's clear-eyed assessment of relative risks. Statistical probability of success for that approach is approximately 12%. My proposed interface method has an estimated 78% probability. Those aren't the only variables that matter, Ben countered, genuine concern evident in his voice. The personal risk is mine to accept, Julie finished firmly. Her gaze met his with the quiet determination that had always been a core element of her character. I understand the quantum mechanics involved better than anyone else available. The interface design will incorporate safeguards based on what we've learned from their experience. She gestured toward her counterpart, whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed under the quarantine field's lights. Besides, we have the advantage of seeing potential consequences and adapting accordingly. The alternate Julie pressed her hand against the containment barrier, her expression revealing a glimpse of emotion beneath her militaristic exterior. The difference is significant, she stated, addressing her counterpart directly. Your Ben's celestial transformation was harmonious. Ours was corrupted by the Chronosapian attack. The quantum feedback in your reality should be considerably less volatile. Something unspoken passed between the two Julies, a cognition that transcended the barrier between them. Both had devoted their lives to understanding the universe's fundamental patterns. Both recognized when a calculated risk was necessary. Ben observed this silent communication, then nodded once in acceptance. We'll proceed with the interface development, but with every possible safeguard and continuous monitoring during the process. As the discussion shifted to technical requirements for the interface mechanism, Gwen entered the research bay with an update from the quantum monitoring stations throughout Bellwood. The dimensional thinning is accelerating, she reported, bringing up a city map overlaid with rapidly expanding areas of quantum disturbance. We're seeing minor physical manifestations at 3 locations, objects partially phasing between realities. Temporal echoes, gravity fluctuations. The alternate Gwen joined them at the barrier, her scarred features set in grim recognition. The pattern matches what we experienced. You have less time than your models suggest. Ben absorbed this information, his enhanced perception already detecting subtle changes in the quantum field surrounding them. Julie, how quickly can you have the interface ready? 6 hours for design and fabrication of essential components, she answered without hesitation. Another 2 for calibration and safety protocols. You have 4, the alternate Ben stated flatly. After that, the quantum fluctuations will begin affecting electronic systems. We lost valuable time when our fabrication facilities went offline. Julie nodded, already mentally reprioritizing her design sequence to focus on critical components first. I'll need access to the advanced fabrication lab and at least 2 assistants with quantum engineering experience. You'll have everything you need, Ben assured her. He turned to Gwen. Coordinate containment teams for the manifestation sites. Priority is observation and data collection. We need to understand exactly how the dimensional bleeding is progressing. As they dispersed to their assigned tasks, Julie found herself working side by side with Ben to establish preliminary interface parameters. Celestial Omnitrix required direct input from its wielder to reveal the quantum frequencies they would need to target. In the focused quiet of preliminary calibrations, Ben spoke softly enough that only she could hear. I remember when we used to worry about making it to tennis matches on time. The stakes have changed a bit. The unexpected reference to their shared past brought a brief smile to Julie's otherwise concentrated expression. The fundamental principles haven't, she replied, adjusting a sensor array with precise movements. Physics is physics, whether it's calculating the perf. ECT serve or stabilizing quantum dimensional barriers. Ben watched her work with undisguised admiration for her expertise. I followed your career, you know. Not just your published papers, but the classified research too. Your theories about quantum entanglement between conscious observers influencing physical reality. They helped me understand what was happening when the Omnitrix began its celestial transformation. Julie's hands paused fractionally in their precise adjustments. That research was highly theoretical. I never published those specific hypotheses. Azimuth had access to our work through Galvan monitoring of promising Earth scientists, Ben explained. He sent it to me 6 months ago with a message that said only, she understands more than she realizes. The Revella Tion that the creator of the Omnitrix had been monitoring her research sent a ripple of professional validation through Julie that momentarily overshadowed even the current crisis. Before she could formulate a response, however, alarms blared throughout the facility. The quantum monitoring system displayed a massive spike in dimensional activity, centered directly on their location. They found us faster than expected. The alternate Ben called out, his mechanical arm already transforming into defensive configuration. The Chronosapiens must have detected our cross-dimensional transfer and tracked the quantum signature. The facility shuddered as reality itself seemed to fluctuate around them. Walls temporarily became transparent, showing glimpses of alternate versions of the same space, some intact. Others damaged or completely destroyed. Temporal echoes rippled through the room, creating multiple overlapping images of everyone present that trailed seconds behind their movements. The quarantine field is destabilizing, Julie reported, rapidly adjusting controls to compensate. Quantum fluctuations are amplifying beyond predicted parameters. Ben moved to her side, the Celestia L Omnitrix pulsing with increasing intensity. We need to accelerate the interface development. Whatever the Chronosapiens are doing, they're using the existing dimensional weakness to affect our reality without physically crossing over. Another, stronger tremor shook the facility. Equipment sparked as quantum fluctuations disrupted electronic systems. In the containment zone, the refugees from the alternate reality began to phase in and out of visual perception, their quantum signature becoming increasingly unstable. We're losing molecular cohesion, the alternate Julie warned, her cybern tick systems working visibly to maintain her physical integrity. Our timeline is bleeding into yours more rapidly than projected. Julie made a rapid series of calculations, then looked up at Ben Witt. The clear-eyed determination of a scientist facing unavoidable conclusions. We don't have time for the full interface development. We need to attempt a direct quantum communication with the Omnitrix now, using what we have. That's too dangerous, Ben protested, genuine concern overriding tactical considerations. Without proper safeguards, the entire reality is at risk, Julie countered firmly. Physics doesn't care about our preferences. If the quantum cascade reaches critical threshold, both our realities collapse, along with potentially dozens of adjacent timelines. She was already modifying her equipment, repurposing components to create a rudimentary version of the interface she had planned to develop over hours. I can establish a basic quantum field harmonizer that should allow direct communication with the Omnitrix's dimensional regulation systems. It won't be elegant, but it might be enough to temporarily stabilize the fluctuations until we can implement a permanent solution. Ben studied her for a moment, recognizing both the scientific logic and personal courage behind her proposal. With a nod of acceptance, he extended his arm with the celestial Omnitrix. What do you need me to do? Focus on maintaining the Omnitrix's current dimensional frequency, Julie instructed, attaching sensor arrays to strategic points around the device. Think of it like holding a musical note perfectly steady while I tune the accompanying instruments to match it. As she worked with rapid precision, the alternate Julie called guidance from within the increasingly unstable containment field. The quantum feedback will attempt to establish synchronization between your consciousness and the dimensional flux. Resist full integration or you'll lose anchor in your native reality. The makeshift interface began to glow with energy as Julie completed the final connections. She looked up at Ben, meeting his eyes with calm resolve that belied the danger of what they were attempting. Ready, he nodded once, his expression reflecting complete trust in her expertise. Ready, Julie activated the quantum harmonizer. Immediately, energy flowed between her equipment and the celestial Omnitrix, establishing a connection at the most fundamental level of reality. The Omnitrix responded instantly, its galaxy-like pattern swirling with increased velocity as it recognized the quantum communication attempt. Ben's expression tightened as he experienced the initial interface, his consciousness expanding into awareness of multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. I can see the fluctuation patterns, like ripples in a pond, but in 4 dimensions. Julie monitored both his vital signs and the quantum energy flows with intense concentration. Focus on Iden, defying the primary resonance frequency, the one generating the largest amplitude oscillations across dimensional barriers. Her voice anchored him as his perception expanded beyond normal human limitations. Through the Omnitrix's enhanced awareness, He could perceive not just the quantum fluctuations themselves but their causal relationships, how each ripple influenced others in cascading patterns across multiple realities. There, he identified, his free hand moving to point at seemingly empty air, but Julie's instruments detected exactly what he was indicating, the primary resonance node generating the dimensional instability. It's oscillating between our reality and theirs, but with additional connections to at least 7 other timelines. Julie adjusted her equipment to target the identified frequency. I'm attempting to generate a counterphase signal to dampen the oscillations. The Omnitrix will need to amplify and distribute the effect. As she worked, the quantum fluctuations intensified further. Reality around them became increasingly unstable, objects phasing in and out of existence, temporal echoes multiplying until dozens of overlapping images of everyone present filled the space. The containment field surrounding the alternate reality refugees flickered dangerously. The Chronosapiens are increasing their temporal pressure, the alternate Ben warned, his voice distorting as his quantum signature fluctuated. They're trying to collapse both our timelines simultaneously now that they're connected. Julie's equipment began to overheat as it generated the complex counter-phase signals required. She ignored the danger, focused entirely on fine-tuning the quantum harmonics to precisely match the dimensional fluctuations. The pattern is too complex for technological interface alone, she realized aloud, calculations racing through her mind. The quantum resonance has too many harmonic overtones for my equipment to address simultaneously. Ben turned to her, his perception still expanded by the Omnitrix's connection to multiple realities. What do we need? Julie met his gaze, scientific certainty overriding personal caution. Direct neural interface. My consciousness needs to help guide the counterphase generation. The human mind can recognize patterns too subtle for our current technology to detect. Before Ben could respond, the alternate. Julie called out from within the failing containment field. That's what we attempted. The quantum feedback nearly as significantly different in this case, Julie finished, her tone brooking no argument as she already began modifying her equipment for neural connection. Your timeline's instability was chaotic. Ours still maintains coherent pattern structure that can be systematically addressed. She looked at Ben directly. It's our best option. The celestial Omnitrix responds to consciousness, yours specifically. With both of us guiding the counterphase signal, we have a 63% probability of success. Another violent reality fluctuation shook the facility, systems failing throughout as quantum instability affected electronic components. The containment field flickered dangerously, he refugees' forms becoming increasingly transparent as their quantum cohesion deteriorated. Ben made his decision. Do it. Julie quickly attached neural interface components to her temples, then established a connection to the quantum harmonizer already linked to the Omnitrix. This will create a three-way connection between my consciousness, yours, and the Omnitrix's dimensional regulation systems. Focus on maintaining your perception of the primary resonance frequency. She activated the neural interface. Immediately, her consciousness expanded beyond normal perception, connecting with Ben's enhanced awareness through the Omnitrix's systems. The experience transcended ordinary sensation, like suddenly perceiving an additional dimension that had always existed but remained previously inaccessible. Through their shared perception, they could see the quantum resonance patterns in their full complexity, beautiful, intricate oscillations connecting multiple realities through harmonic relationships that resembled music more than physics. At the center of these patterns, the Chronosapien temporal manipulation was visible as discordant interventions deliberately amplifying destructive frequencies. There, Julie's thoughts communicated directly through the interface, highlighting specific harmonic patterns that required adjustment. The primary nodes are maintaining temporal synchronization between realities. If we generate counter-phase signals at precisely these points, Ben's consciousness responded with intuitive understanding, the celestial Omnitrix adapting to their shared intent. The Omnitrix can generate the counter-phase energy, but distribution requires precise targeting across dimensional boundaries. Their shared perception expanded further, encompassing the entire quantum field surrounding Bellwood. Through this enhanced awareness, they could see how the dimensional instability connected to the celestial Omnitrix's activation, not as a malfunction but as an intended function that had been hijacked by the Chronosapien intervention. The celestial transformation was designed to establish controlled connections between compatible realities, Julie realized. Her scientific mind synthesizing patterns into coherent theory. The Chronosapiens are exploiting that function to force destructive interference instead. Then we reclaim the original purpose, Ben responded. His consciousness directing the Omnitrix's energy with increasing precision guided by Julie's quantum expertise. Together, their merged awareness began generating counter-phase signals at each critical node in the resonance pattern. The celestial Omnitrix amplified and distributed these signals across dimensional boundaries, establishing constructive interference where destructive patterns had dominated. Throughout the facility, reality fluctuations began to stabilize. Temporal echoes faded as the primary timeline reasserted dominance. In the containment zone, the alternate reality refugees regained quantum cohesion, their forms solidifying as the dimensional barriers between realities strengthened rather than collapsed. The Chronosapiens are attempting to adapt their temporal manipulation. Ben observed through their shared perception, shifting to secondary frequency patterns to maintain the cascade. We need to establish a self-sustaining counter-phase system, Julie responded. Her consciousness already formulating the necessary mathematical structure. A quantum feedback loop that will automatically identify and neutralize any further attempts at dimensional destabilization. Their shared awareness constructed the complex pattern, using the celestial Omnitrix's unique ability to manipulate reality at its most fundamental level. The counter-phase system took form. An elegant mathematical construct that resembled a multidimensional lattice surrounding Bellwood and extending into adjacent realities. As the system activated, the remaining quantum fluctuations rapidly diminished. Reality solidified, electronic systems returning to normal function throughout the facility. The containment field around the refugees stabilized completely, their quantum signatures now safely isolated from the primary timeline. The neural interface between Julie, Ben, and the Omnitrix had accomplished in minutes what would have taken hours of technological development, and with greater precision than technology alone could have achieved. As the immediate crisis subsided, Julie carefully deactivated the neural interface, gradually withdrawing her consciousness from the expanded awareness they had shared. The experience of returning to ordinary perception was disorienting, like suddenly losing access to colors or dimensions that she had briefly perceived in their fullness. Ben's consciousness similarly returned to normal parameters, though the celestial Omnitrix continued to maintain the counter-phase system they had established. He blinked several times as his perception readjusted, then focused on Julie with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, noting her physical exhaustion from the intense mental exertion. Julie nodded, professional satisfaction at their success overriding personal discomfort. The neural feedback was within tolerance levels. She checked her equipment readings with scientific thoroughness. The counter-phase system is self-sustaining. Quantum stability has returned to 94% of normal parameters and is continuing to improve. In the containment zone, the alternate reality versions of themselves were conducting their own assessments. The alternate Julie's cybernetic system scanned the dimensional barriers with visible data streams crossing her enhanced vision. "Remarkable," she stated with professional appreciation that transcended their differences. "You've not only stabilized the quantum fluctuations but established a protection system against further temporal manipulation. The Chronosapiens won't be able to use the same approach again." The alternate Ben studied the celestial Omnitrix with analytical interest. "Your version completed the transformation correctly. Ours was corrupted by the attack, Because why our attempts at stabilization failed." He looked up, meeting his counterpart's gaze directly. "You've bought us time, but our reality remains fundamentally unstable. We can't return." Ben nodded, understanding the implication. "You need permanent asylum in this timeline, which presents its own set of quantum complications," Julie added, already calculating the long-term effects of maintaining multiple versions of the same individuals within a single timeline. "We'll need to develop a method to permanently differentiate your quantum signatures from ours to prevent resonance effects." Gwen rejoined them, having coordinated the stabilization efforts throughout Bellwood. "The dimensional manifestations at other locations have subsided. Whatever you did, it worked." She glanced between Ben and Julie with perceptive assessment of their shared experience. "Though I suspect what you did was considerably more involved than the technical explanation suggests. Before either could respond, a new alert sounded, different from the crisis warnings, indicating instead an incoming communication on secured channels. The main display activated to show a familiar blue-skinned alien, female with an expression of measured approval. "Impressive work," Xylene stated without preamble. "The quantum stabilization pattern you've established has caught the attention of the Guardians Council. The Chronosapiens have withdrawn their temporal probes from your reality's timestream." Ben straightened, the celestial Omnitrix pulsing in apparent response to Xylene's presence even across the communication channel. "They'll try again through different means. The arrival of alternate timeline refugees confirms their determination to prevent the celestial Omnitrix from functioning as intended." Xylene's expression confirmed his assessment. "Indeed, which is why I'm returning to Earth immediately with additional information about the Omnitrix's intended evolutionary functions." Her gaze shifted to include Julie. "Including specifications that will be of particular interest to you, Drive. Yamamoto, your quantum harmonization work has proven a crucial element that Azimuth himself considered read essential to the Omnitrix's final form." The communication ended, leaving a momentary silence as everyone processed the implications. The mention of Azimuth having specifically anticipated Julie's quantum research added yet another layer to the increasingly complex connections between seemingly separate events. The alternate Ben was the first to speak. "In our timeline, Julie's quantum theories were what allowed the initial integration of Omnitrix technology with human evolutionary potential. If your Azimuth also recognized that connection, then my return to Bellwood wasn't coincidence," Julie concluded, her scientific mind immediately identifying the pattern. "The quantum fluctuations that drew my attention were specifically calibrated to frequencies that would be recognizable to someone with my particular research background." Ben studied the celestial Omnitrix with newfound understanding. "The device has been calling to the people it needs to complete its intended function. First Kai's archaeological expertise to activate the transformation, now your quantum physics knowledge to stabilize it." The implications hung in the air between them, that their separate paths had perhaps never been truly separate at all, but part of a larger pattern orchestrated across time and space by forces that had anticipated their individual growth and eventual reconvergence. Julie approached this revelation with the same analytical thoroughness she applied to all phenomena, examining it from multiple perspectives before forming conclusions. Yet she couldn't deny the empirical evidence. Their shared neural interface had accomplished what neither could have done alone, combining her scientific expertise with Ben's unique connection to the Omnitrix in perfect complementary function. "We should begin preparations for Xylene's arrival," she stated, professional focus reasserting itself, "and develop more permanent accommodations for our alternate reality guests. The quantum differentiation process will require significant research." As the others dispersed to their various responsibilities, Ben remained beside Julie as she organized her research data from their dimensional stabilization effort. "The neural interface experience," he began carefully. "It was more than just scientific collaboration." Julie met his gaze with characteristic directness. "Yes, consciousness sharing at the quantum level transcends ordinary communication. We essentially experienced portions of each other's cognitive patterns directly." A hint of her old warmth showed through her professional demeanor. "Your mind has changed considerably since I knew you last. The celestial Omnitrix has expanded your perception in ways I find fascinating from a scientific perspective." "And from a non-scientific perspective?" Ben asked, a glimpse of their former connection visible in the question. Julie allowed herself a small smile, one that acknowledged their shared history without dismissing their separate growth. "That would require further study to formulate proper conclusions. Fortunately, it appears we'll be working together for the foreseeable future." As she turned back to her equipment, Ben recognized the response for what it was, not dismissal but rather the cautious approach of a scientist who preferred thorough investigation before drawing conclusions. Their paths had reconverged through cosmic forces neither had anticipated, bringing together the separate strengths they had developed during their time apart. The quantum interface had shown them both a glimpse of what was possible when those strengths combined, not just for addressing dimensional crises, but for understanding each other on levels that transcended ordinary human connection. What that understanding might develop into remained to be seen, but the foundation had been established on something more profound than their youthful relationship had ever achieved. Outside the facility, Bellwood Conton. UED to stabilize as the counterphase system strengthened reality's coherence throughout the region. The quantum signature of the celestial Omnitrix pulsed in harmony with the protection field they created together, a perfect synthesis of alien technology, human consciousness, and the unique connections that bound them across time, space, and even alternate realities. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Diplomatic Entanglements. The Plummer orbital platform designated Avalon maintained geosynchronous position 35,000 kilometers above Earth's surface. Unlike the bulky International S.P.A. stations visible to civilian telescopes, Avalon existed in a perpetual state of optical displacement, a technology borrowed from Galvan cloaking systems that rendered it effectively invisible to conventional detection methods. Its sleek architecture blended Petrosapian crystalline support structures with galvanic mechamorph adaptive technology, creating a facility that could reconfigure itself for various diplomatic functions. Today, it had assumed its most formal configuration in preparation for the arrival of the Galactic Council's delegation. In the central observation deck, Ben Tenny's on stood with perfect stillness as attendants made final adjustments to his diplomatic attire. The formal garment combined elements of human formal wear with symbolic components from 24 alien cultures, subtle acknowledgments of Earth's new position in the cosmic hierarchy. The celestial Omnitrix gleamed against his forearm, its swirling patterns momentarily subdued as if respecting the gravity of the occasion. The Petrosapian emblems should be positioned precisely 3 centimeters above the Aerophibian honor marks, advised the protocol officer, a thin, reedy man who had previously Ved in Earth's diplomatic corps before being recruited to the Plumbers for his extraordinary memory of interstellar customs. The Galactic Council interprets precise adherence to protocol as an indicator of serious intent. Ben allowed the adjustments with patient tolerance that would have shocked his teenage self. Has there been any update on which council members are actually attending? The official notification mentioned only a representative delegation. The protocol officer consulted his data tablet. The advanced communication remains deliberately vague, a common negotiating tactic to maintain positional advantage. However, energy signatures detected approaching the solar system suggest at least one Uxorite vessel among the diplomatic fleet. Ben absorbed this information with a surd interest that masked deeper implications. Xylene was Uxorite. Her presence among the delegation would provide at least one potentially sympathetic voice. Whether that would prove advantage or complication remained to be seen. And our delegation is prepared? He asked, glancing toward the adjoining chamber where Earth's representatives were completing their own preparations. As prepared as possible given the circumstances. The protocol officer replied with diplomatic understatement. The inclusion of multiple international representatives was complicated. Ben suppressed a smile at the obvious difficulty of explaining to Earth's governments why diplomats with no previous knowledge of alien life were suddenly required for interstellar negotiations. The celestial Omnitrix incident had forced an acceleration of disclosure protocols that had been intended to unfold gradually over decades. Kai Green entered the observation deck, her transformation from field archaeologist to diplomatic advisor as complete as the formal attire she now wore. The deep blue dress incorporated subtle patterns that referenced Earth's earliest recorded interactions with alien visitors, details on someone with her specialized knowledge could have authorized. The historical briefing materials have been distributed to our delegation, she reported, joining Ben at the viewport. Though I ECT most are still processing the revelation that humanity has been interacting with alien civilizations since before recorded history. Ben studied her with appreciation that transcended her formal appearance. You've done remarkable work preparing them on impossible timelines. Your ability to distill thousands of years of hidden history into digestible briefings is nothing short of miraculous. Kai's expression remained professionally composed, though her eyes conveyed gratitude for the recognition. Having access to the celestial Omnitrix's historical database certainly helped. The device contains records even my grandfather's most secret archives never mentioned. They stood together in momentary silence, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them, a blue-green jewel that had suddenly become the focus of intense interstellar interest. Are you ready for this? Kai asked quietly, the question carrying weight beyond diplomatic preparations. Ben considered thoughtfully before answering. Reddy would suggest I fully understand what we're facing. I don't think anyone does, not even Azimuth anticipated how quickly events would unfold once the celestial transformation occurred. The Omnitrix pulsed gently on his arm, as if acknowledging its role in their current circumstances. But am I prepared to represent Earth's interests while navigating whatever agenda the Council brings? As prepared as I can be. A hint of his old confidence surfaced in his slight smile. Besides, improvising under pressure has always been something of a specialty. Kai returned the smile with one of her own, a brief moment of shared history amidst the weight of their current responsibilities. Before she could respond, the observation deck's doors slid open again. Julie Yamamoto entered, her ire reflecting a different aspect of Earth's new cosmic position. Where Kai's clothing referenced historical connections, Julie's ensemble suggested technological advancement, subtle circuitry patterns, woven into precisely structured fabrics that seemed to shift subtly as she moved. In her hand, she carried a specialized data tablet displaying quantum readings only she fully understood. The dimensional stabilization field is holding at optimal parameters, she reported without preamble. Our alternate reality guests remain securely contained with no sign of quantum degradation. Additionally, I've completed preliminary analysis of the specifications Xylene transmitted ahead of her arrival. Ben noted how Julie's analytical mind remained focused on practical concerns even amidst diplomatic ceremony. It was a quality he had always admired, her ability to maintain scientific perspective when others might be distracted by circumstance. Anything that might impact today's negotiations? He asked. Julie's expression revealed careful consideration. The specifications suggest the celestial Omnitrix was designed with significantly greater capabilities than even our current understanding indicates. Specifically, it appears to function as a nexus for evolutionary potential across multiple species, not just as a transformation device. Kai immediately grasped the implication, which explains why certain factions might consider it threatening. The ability to accelerate evolutionary development could shift the balance of power between established and emerging species. Precisely, Julie confirmed. Based on the quantum signatures involved, the device appears capable of establishing harmonic resonance between disparate evolutionary paths, potentially allowing for guided advancement rather than random mutation. Ben absorbed this information with the enhanced comprehension granted by the Omnitrix itself. So the celestial Omnitrix isn't just about transforming one individual into different alien forms, it's about transforming entire species through guided evolution. A significant escalation from its original purpose, observed a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see Magistrate Max Tennyson entering the observation deck. Though now in his 70s, Ben's grandfather maintained the commanding presence that had made him legendary among plumber ranks. His formal magistrate uniform, worn rarely and only for the most significant occasions, displayed rank insignia recognized throughout the galactic community. The Galactic Council has accelerated their approach, Max announced, moving to join them at the viewport. Their vessels have entered the solar system and will arrive within 30 minutes. Preliminary communications indicate a delegation of 7 council representatives. 7 is significant, Kai noted, her knowledge of alien cultural patterns immediately identifying the symbolism. It suggests they're treating this as a Class 1 diplomacy event, equivalent to first contact protocols despite Earth's existing relationship with the wider galactic community. Max nodded. They're essentially reclassifying Earth based on the activation of the celestial Omnitrix. As far as the Council is concerned, we've become a different kind of civilization overnight. Which explains the formal delegation rather than standard diplomatic channels, Ben concluded. The political implications becoming clear. They want to establish new parameters for interaction now that Earth possesses technology they consider potentially disruptive or threatening, Max added with the candor of experience. The Council maintains stability partly by controlling the pace of technological advancement among younger species. The celestial Omnitrix represents an unprecedented acceleration they didn't authorize and can't control. The gravity of their situation settled over the group. Earth stood at a pivotal moment, one that would determine its place in the galactic community for generations to come. A subtle alert tone sounded throughout the observation deck. The protocol officer consulted his tablet with sudden intensity. Magistrate, he addressed Max with formal urgency. The Uxorite vessel has broken formation from the main council fleet. It's approaching independently on an expedited vector. Max's expression revealed experienced concern. Quote, "Is there any indication of hostile intent?" "None, sir. They're maintaining open communication channels and diplomatic protocols. They appear to be." The officer paused, double-checking his readings. Requesting private audience prior to the formal council session. Ben and Max exchanged meaningful glances. This deviation from protocol could represent either opportunity or complication. "Xylene," Ben stated with certainty. "She's making a preemptive move to speak with us before the council can establish their unified position." "A risky diplomatic maneuver," Max observed, though a hint of approval colored his tone. "But potentially advantageous if she's bringing information the full council wouldn't share." Ben made his decision with the quiet authority that had increasingly defined his leadership. "Grant the request. Direct them to the secondary docking bay to avoid immediate detection by the main council fleet. Kai, Julie, your presence would be valuable for this preliminary discussion." As preparations shifted to accommodate this unexpected development, Ben turned his attention outward toward the stars. Somewhere among them approached a being who had once delivered the original Omnitrix to Earth, setting in motion events that had transformed not only his life but potentially the future of humanity itself. Whatever Xylene's purpose in seeking private audience, it would certainly shape the diplomatic confrontation to follow. The celestial Omnitrix pulsed with subtle energy, as if recognizing the approach of one connected to its original creation. The secondary docking bay had been designed for discretion, its approach vectors carefully calculated to minimize visibility from most observation angles. As the Uxorite vessel completed its docking sequence, Ben studied its elegant configuration with enhanced perception granted by the Omnitrix. Unlike the utilitarian designs favored by many spacefaring civilizations, the ship incorporated artistic elements that served both aesthetic and functional purposes. Crystalline structures along its hull refracted light in patterns that would confuse most tracking systems while creating beautiful prismatic displays. The vessel's outer hull shimmered with final decontamination protocols before the airlock cycled open. First emerged two Uxorite security officers, tall, slender beings with blue-tinted skin and RGED cranial structures that housed their species' impressive mental capabilities. They scanned the reception area with both technological devices and their natural telepathic abilities before signaling clearance to those waiting within the ship. Xylene emerged with the fluid grace characteristic of her species. Unlike her previous brief communication appearance, her physical presence carried an authority that immediately commanded attention. She wore formal Uxorite diplomatic attire, layers of shimmering material that seemed to exist partially in another phase state, creating visual effects human eyes struggled to process completely. Around her neck hung a medallion that Ben recognized as the mark of a guardian of Nexus Points, one of the most respected positions in certain galactic sectors. Behind her came two more Uxorites, one clearly a scientific advisor judging by the specialized equipment incorporated into their attire, the other a cultural attaché whose clothing displayed symbolic references to multiple civilizations including, notably, ancient human societies. "Benjamin Tennyson," Xylene greeted, moving forward with measured steps that followed precise diplomatic protocol while somehow managing to convey genuine warmth. "Our meeting occurs earlier than the council intended, but necessity dictates acceleration." She extended her three-fingered hand in the human eating custom, a gesture that acknowledged Earth's customs rather than imposing her own. Ben accepted the greeting with appropriate formality. "Guardian Xylene," he responded, using her formal title. "Earth welcomes you and appreciates your discretion in this preliminary meeting." After completing formal introductions of all present, they moved to a conference chamber adjacent to the docking bay. Unlike the grand diplomatic hall prepared for the full council meeting, this room offered a more intimate setting designed for candid discussion. Once privacy protocols were activated, Xylene's demeanor shifted subtly from formal diplomat to something more direct. "We have approximately 26 minutes before the main council fleet detects our separation and investigates," she stated without preamble. "Therefore, I must be efficient with information of critical importance." She gestured to her scientific advisor, who activated a holographic display in the center of the conference table. A complex molecular structure appeared, one that Julie immediately recognized as related to the celestial Omnitrix's quantum core configuration. What you've activated on Earth, Xylene continued, her luminous eyes focused on Ben, is not merely an advanced version of the Omnitrix. It is the culmination of Azimuth's lifework, a device intended to guide evolutionary advancement across multiple species simultaneously. Julie leaned forward, her scientific curiosity immediately engaged. The quantum resonance patterns I detected during stabilization suggested something similar. The device estably she's harmonic frequencies between different evolutionary pathways. Xylene nodded with apparent approval of Julie's understanding. Precisely. The celestial Omnitrix was designed as the ultimate answer to a question Azimuth has pursued for millennia: how to prevent species from destroying themselves through evolutionary imbalance. The hologram shifted to display examples of civilizations that apparently destroyed themselves by developing technological capabilities that outpaced their biological or social evolution. Most advanced species follow similar patterns, Xylene explained. Our technological development accelerates exponentially while their biological adaptation remains constrained by natural selection timeframes. The resulting imbalance frequently leads to self-destruction through warfare, environmental collapse, or social fragmentation. Kai's archaeological expertise immediately connected this to human history. We've seen similar patterns throughout Earth's development. Civilizations advance technologically until they reach a critical threshold, then collapse due to inability to manage the consequences of their innovations. The celestial Omnitrix offers an alternative path, Xylene continued. It can synchronize technological and biological development, allowing species to adapt physically and mentally to the technologies they create. In essence, it day evolution to match innovation, preventing the fatal imbalance that has destroyed countless civilizations. Ben studied the holographic representations with the enhanced comprehension granted by the Omnitrix itself. That's why certain council members would consider it threatening. It fundamentally changes the established order of development, potentially allowing younger species to advance rapidly instead of following the traditional millennia-long evolutionary path. And therein lies our current diplomatic crisis, Xylene confirmed. The Council maintains stability through carefully regulated advancement. Species are classified by developmental stages, with strict limitations on technology transfer between categories. Her expression conveyed subtle disapproval of this system despite her diplomatic position. The celestial Omnitrix represents a disruption to this carefully maintained hierarchy. Max Tennyson, who had been listening carefully, identified the political dynamics at play. The Council isn't unified on this issue, are they? That's why you're here ahead of the main delegation. Xylene's posture suggested appreciation of his perception. The Council is deeply divided. Certain factions, particularly the Chronosapiens and their allies, advocate for immediate containment of the Omnitrix technology and quarantine of Earth until proper developmental stages are achieved naturally. Which would take thousands of years, Julie observed with scientific precision. At minimum, Xylene confirmed. Other factions, including my own people, believe Azimuth's approach offers hope for breaking the cycle of self-destruction that has claimed too many promising civilizations. We advocate for supervised integration rather than containment. Ben processed this informati, on with the measured consideration that had increasingly defined his leadership. And the purpose of today's formal delegation: to assess Earth's capability to responsibly manage the evolutionary potential the celestial Omnitrix represents, Xylene answered directly. The Council will present a unified diplomatic front, but beneath formalities, they are evaluating whether to classify Earth as a partner in guided evolution, or a threat to galactic stability. The implications hung heavily in the conference chamber. Earth's future relationship with the galactic community would be fundamentally shaped by the coming negotiations. What would convince them of our responsibility? Ben asked, focusing on practical strategy. Xylene's expression suggested complex considerations. The primary concern is not technological management but wisdom in application. The Council will be evaluating not just control systems and safeguards, but philosophical and ethical frameworks for deployment. She turned to Kai. Your world's diverse cultural perspectives on advancement and balance will be crucial. Earth has developed remarkably varied approaches to questions of progress versus tradition, individual evolution versus collective stability. To Julie, she added, similarly, your scientific community's capacity for self-regulation and ethical consideration will be carefully assessed. The Council will want evidence that Earth's technological development includes robust ethical frameworks. Finally, to Ben, but most critically, they will be evaluating you, Benjamin. As the Omnitrix wielder, your judgment ultimately controls its application. Your demonstrated wisdom, or lack thereof, will significantly influence their determination. Ben absorbed this responsibility with characteristic resolution. Then we should prepare for the most comprehensive ethical and philosophical examination in Earth's history. Indeed, Xylene agreed, a hint of something that might have been admiration crossing her features. Though I should note, you are not being evaluated against abstract ideals of perfection. The Council understands that all species navigate ethical complexities imperfectly. They are looking for evidence of thoughtful engagement with difficult questions, not perfect answers. A subtle alert tone interrupted further discussion. The protocol officer's voice came through the communication system. Magistrate Tennyson, the main council fleet has altered course. They appear to have detected the Uxorite vessel's separate approach. Estimated arrival at Avalon in 11 minutes. Significantly ahead of previous projections. Max acknowledged the update with experienced calm. It seems our preliminary discussion must conclude sooner than planned. Xylene rose with fluid grace. One final piece of critical information before formal proceedings begin. She gestured to her cultural attaché, who presented Ben with a small crystalline device. This contains historical records of previous species who achieved evolutionary acceleration similar to what the celestial Omnitrix offers. Study their approaches, both successful and failed. The patterns may prove instructive during council examination. As they prepared to move toward the main diplomatic hall, Xylene approached Ben directly. Her voice lowered to ensure privacy. The council will attempt to separate you from human advisors during certain portions of the proceedings, she warned. They will claim protocol necessitates private consultation with the Omnitrix wielder alone. Be prepared for this tactic. It is designed to isolate you from perspectives that ground your humanity while subjecting you to subtle psychological evaluation. Ben met her gaze with quiet appreciation for the warning. Thank you for the advance notice. May I ask why you're providing assistance that could be interpreted as undermining council procedures? Xylene's expression conveyed complex motivations beyond simple diplomatic calculation. The guardians of nexus points exist to maintain balance between civilizations, not to enforce artificial hierarchies. What happens on Earth affects far more than your single world. She paused, then added with subtle emphasis, and I have observed your development since you were a child, Benjamin. From impulsive boy to thoughtful leader. I believe Azimuth chose correctly when he designated Earth, and you specifically, for the Omnitrix legacy. The personal dimension of her statement created a momentary connection that transcended formal diplomatic interaction. Before Ben could respond, however, another alert signaled the imminent arrival of the council fleet. As they moved to their respective positions for the formal reception, Ben found himself evaluating Xylene with enhanced perception. Behind her diplomatic exterior lay depths he had only begun to glimpse. Centuries of experience navigating cosmic affairs while maintaining personal integrity despite political pressures. He recognized in her something beyond her official role, a potential ally whose perspective transcended the limitations of any single civilization's viewpoint. The celestial Omnitrix pulsed gently on his arm, as if confirming connections that extended beyond conscious awareness. The Grand Diplomatic Hall of Avalon Station had been specifically designed to accommodate diverse physiological needs while projecting appropriate solemnity for interstellar negotiations. Its architecture incorporated elements from dozens of civilizations, creating a space that belonged to no single culture while offering recognition to many. Gravity, atmospheric composition, and even subtle light frequencies could be adjusted in different sections to ensure comfort for various delegations. As the 7 meters, embers of the Galactic Council processed into the hull, these adaptive systems worked seamlessly to accommodate their disparate requirements. The delegation represented a carefully selected cross-section of established galactic powers. An ancient Galvan elder whose diminutive size belied their species' technological superiority, hovering on a platform that brought them to eye level with taller species. A crystalline Petrosapian diplomat whose faceted body refracted light in patterns that conveyed emotional states beyond verbal communication. A Chronosapian representative whose mechanical bow die ticked with precise movements that seemed to manipulate the subjective experience of time in their immediate vicinity. An imposing Tetraman ambassador whose 4 arms were adorned with ceremonial bracers indicating high governmental authority. A cerebrocrustacean envoy whose advanced cranial development allowed simultaneous processing of multiple diplomatic scenarios. A Necrophrygian diplom, who phased between visibility and near transparency as they moved, their cold aura contained by specialized environmental fields. And finally, Xylene, now formally positioned as the Uxorite Repress. Entative rather than in her guardian of Nexus Point's capacity, a subtle distinction that nevertheless carried significant political implications. The Earth delegation awaited them with carefully rehearsed formality. Ben stood at its center. The celestial Omnitrix visible on his arm, not highlighted but certainly not concealed. Around him were positioned representatives from major Earth nations Elan, G with specialized advisors including Kai, Julie, and Max in his magistrate capacity. The Galvan Elder floated forward, assuming the role of primary spokesperson, a position that acknowledged their SP's role in creating the technology under discussion. Earth representatives, the Elder began, their voice surprisingly resonant for their small stature. The Galactic Council recognizes this unprecedented gathering. The activation of a celestial-class technology within your planetary system necessitates reconsideration of Earth's status within the galactic community. Ben stepped forward with measured confidence, executing the formal response exactly as the protocol officer had advised. The people of Earth welcome the Galactic Council and recognize the significance of this consultation. We stand ready to discuss mutual interests in maintaining cosmic stability while honoring the technological legacy entrusted to our stewardship. The careful phrasing, acknowledging Council authorate, while asserting Earth's legitimate claim to the Omnitrix technology, set the tone for the delicate negotiations to follow. The Galvan Elder's expression revealed nothing of their assessment of this response. The Council proposes structured examination of the celestial Omnitrix activation, its implications, and appropriate protocols for its management. We request detailed briefing on the transformation event, current containment measures, and planned applications. What followed was a meticulously choreographed exchange of information, Earth's representatives presenting prepared briefings on the Omnitrix transformation while Council members posed precisely calibrated questions designed to probe not just factual knowledge but philosophical frameworks and ethical considerations. Ben navigated this complex territory with surprising diplomatic skill, drawing on Kai's historical context, Julie's scientific precision, and his own evolving understanding of the Omnitrix's true purpose. His younger self might have responded with impatience to the Council's methodical approach, he now engaged with thoughtful consideration that demonstrated significant maturity. After 3 hours of formal presentations and questioning, the Chronosapian representative made the move Xylene had warned about. Protocol dictates private consultation with the primary technology custodian, they announced. Mechanical voice precisely modulated to project reasonable authority rather than demand. We request Benjamin Tennyson accompany the Council representatives to the evaluation chamber for specialized assessment. Before Earth's delegation could object, the Petrosapian diplomat added with careful diplomacy, this represents standard procedure for evaluation of celestial-class technology implementation. The process allows for more efficient information exchange without the complexities of full delegation presence. Ben met Xylene's gaze briefly across the chamber, noting her subtle confirmation that this was indeed the isolation tactic she had predicted. With calm authority that belied any concern, he addressed the Council directly. Earth respects Council protocols while maintaining our own procedural requirements. He stated diplomatically, I propose a compromise that honors both traditions. I will participate in the specialized assessment with 2 Earth advisors present as OB servers only, not participants in the direct evaluation. The Council members exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them that suggested this response had been anticipated and contingencies prepared. The Galvan Elder inclined their head slightly. The Council accepts this reasonable modification. Please select your observers and proceed to the evaluation chamber. The remaining Arth delegation will be provided appropriate accommodations during this phase of proceedings. Ben designated Kai and Julie as his accompanying observers, a choice that balanced historical knowledge with scientific expertise while maintaining human perspective. As they followed the council representatives toward the specialized chamber, he maintained outward diplomatic composure while remaining inwardly alert to the evaluation that would certainly extend far beyond technical questions about the Omnitrix itself. The evaluation chamber proved significantly different from the formal diplomatic hall. Its circular design featured a central position clearly intended for the subject of assessment, with council members arranged in an encompassing circle that suggested both observation and subtle psychological pressure through spatial arrangement. As Ben took the central position, Kai and Julie were directed to elevated observation seats that allowed them to witness proceedings without direct participation. The message was clear: Ben would face this evaluation alone, though not unobserved by allied perspectives. The Galvan elder initiated the proceedings with directness that contrasted their previous diplomatic language. Benjamin Tennyson, you now control the most powerful evolutionary technology in known space, a device with capacity to fundamentally alter development patterns across multiple species simultaneously. The Council must evaluate your comprehension of this responsibility. What followed was unlike any diplomatic exchange Ben had experienced before. Questions came rapidly from different Council members, shifting between technical specifications, ethical hypotheticals, historical precedents, and personal psychological probing, all clearly designed to prevent pre-par-ed responses while revealing authentic thought processes. Describe the quantum configuration that allows cross-species evolutionary synchronization, demanded the cerebrocrustacean without preamble. Before Ben could fully formulate his response, the Tetraman interrupted. You discover a pre-spacefaring civilization on the brink of self-destruction through technological misapplication. The Steel Omnitrix could accelerate their evolutionary adaptation to prevent collapse. Do you intervene? What limitations would you place on human evolutionary acceleration? The Chronosapian inquired, the question overlapping the previous one. Explain your understanding of the Verdona principle regarding unintended consequences of artificial evolutionary pressure, the Necrophrygian added, referencing an obscure ethical framework Ben had never encountered. The barrage continued, questions deliberately structured to create cognitive pressure while preventing linear analytical responses. Through it all, Ben maintained remarkable composure, sometimes acknowledging limited knowledge, other times offering thoughtful ethical frameworks, occasionally proposing balanced approaches to complex scenarios. From their observation positions, Kai and Julie recognized the sophisticated psychological evaluation underlying the apparent chaos of questioning. The Council was testing not just Ben's knowledge but his decision-making processes under pressure, his ethical intuition when facing novel challenges, and his self-awareness regarding limitations. After nearly 2 hours of intensive questioning, a subtle shift occurred. The Chronosapian representative moved the evaluation into more personal territory. The wielder's psychological stability directly impacts celestial Omnitrix functionality. They stated with mechanical precision. Describe your personal connection management with other sentient beings and how these attachments influence your operational decisions. Ben recognized the question's true purpose immediately, probing his emotional frameworks and how they might affect Omnitrix usage. Rather than deflecting to technical considerations, he chose authenticity. The Omnitrix's greatest value has always been its capacity to foster understanding between different beings, he responded thoughtfully. My personal connections, whether with humans or other species, enhance rather than compromise this function. They provide diverse perspectives that prevent isolated decision-making. The Petrosapian diplomat's crystalline features refracted light in patterns suggesting intense interest. You maintain particularly significant connections with specific individuals who influence your development path. Explain the nature of these connections and their impact on your wielding of celestial technology. In the observation seats, Kai and Julie exchanged brief glances, recognizing the Council's interest in Ben's closest relationships, including, potentially, with themselves. Ben considered his response carefully. Different connections provide different essential perspectives. Historical understanding grounds present decisions in past wisdom. His gaze flickered briefly toward Kai. Scientific analysis ensures technological applications remain rigorously examined. A momentary glance toward Julie. And cosmic perspective prevents cultural limitations from narrowing possibility. Here, he looked directly at Xylene, acknowledging her influence as well. These connections don't divide my attention, they complete my understanding. The celestial Omnitrix functions optimally when informed by diverse wisdom rather than singular perspective. A subtle ripple of reaction passed through the council members, some indicating approval, others reservation. The Galvan elder studied Ben with intensified focus. You describe an unusual philosophical framework for wielding celestial technology, they observed. Most historical custodians isolated themselves to prevent emotional entanglements from influencing their judgment. You propose the opposite approach, suggesting that multiple strong connections actually enhance rather than compromise decision quality. Ben met the elder's gaze directly. With respect, those historical custodians ultimately failed in their missions, didn't they? Isolation led to perspective narrowing and eventually misapplication of their technologies. A moment of surprised silence followed this bold assertion. The Galvan elder's expression revealed nothing, but the slight tilt of their hovering platform suggested reassessment. An interesting observation, they finally commented, though perhaps incomplete in its historical context. Xylene spoke for the first time during the evaluation, her melodious voice carrying subtle tones that those with enhanced perception might recognize as support. The historical records do indicate a statistical correlation between custodian isolation and eventual technological misapplication. She noted with diplomatic precision, particularly in cases involving evolutionary acceleration technologies. The Chronosapian representative made a sound like clockwork grinding momentarily before regaining smooth function. Statistical correlations do not establish causation. Custodian judgment frameworks remain individually assessed rather than categorically approved. The exchange revealed developing factions within the council itself, some apparently more receptive to Ben's approach than others. Before further debate could develop, however, an urgent communication interrupted the proceedings. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber, a plumber emergency dispatch displaying a massive energy disturbance in Earth's atmosphere directly above Bellwood. Council members, Max Tennyson's voice accompanied the projection. We have an urgent situation developing. An unidentified vessel has breached Earth's defensive perimeter and deployed what appears to be a dimensional disruption device over the celestial Omnitrix's primary activation site. The projection shifted to show a massive ship of unfamiliar design hovering above Bellwood. From its underside extended a device generating visible energy distortions that resembled the quantum fluctuations Julie had previously stabilized, but at significantly greater intensity. They're attempting to force dimensional instability, Julie observed immediately, professional analysis overriding diplomatic caution. The pattern matches what we observed during the alternate reality incursion, but deliberately induced rather than naturally occurring. Quote, Ben rose from the evaluation position, the celestial Omnitrix already pulsing with increased energy as it detected the distant threat. This evaluation must be temporarily suspended. He stated with calm authority that nonetheless brooked no argument. Earth is under attack, and the celestial Omnitrix appears to be the target. The council members exchanged glances of varying concern, alarm, and, from certain representatives, what might have been anticipation. The Chronosapian's mechanical features revealed nothing, but a subtle temporal distortion them suggested increased internal activity. This development is unexpected, the Galvan elder stated carefully, though something in their tone suggested perhaps it wasn't entirely surprising to all present. Xylene moved with swift purpose toward the communication projection. Magnify the vessel's propulsion configuration, she instructed. When the image enhanced, her expression hardened with recognition. That's a Maltruant-class temporal dislocation ship. It's designed specifically for weakening reality barriers between dimensions. Maltruant? Kai questioned, historical knowledge immediately seeking relevant context. The rogue Chronosapian from the Time War. Xylene nodded grimly. His technology was supposedly contained after his defeat, but clearly some has been repurposed. All eyes turned to the Chronosapian representative, whose clockwork body ticked with sudden intensity. The Council does not endorse unauthorized deployment of temporal technology, they state. With mechanical precision that carefully avoided addressing the specific vessel's origins or purpose. Ben's expression revealed measured assessment rather than accusation. Intent can be determined later. The immediate priority is preventing dimensional destabilization over a populated area. He turned to the council collectively. I request temporary suspension of evaluation protocols to address this threat. The Galvan elder considered briefly before inclining their head. Granted. The council will observe response measures as continuation of overall assessment. In that moment, the true nature of the situation clarified for Ben, Kai, and Julie simultaneously. This wasn't merely an attack, it was an extension of the evaluation itself. Whether officially sanctioned by the entire Kunk, or initiated by certain factions within it, the dimensional threat presented a practical test of how they would handle a crisis involving the celestial Omnitrix's capabilities. Ben met the challenge with decisive leadership that revealed how far he had evolved from the impulsive teenager who had first found the Omnitrix. Julie, coordinate with your quantum physics team to analyze the Dimensi. Onal disruptor's specific frequency patterns. We'll need precise countermeasures to prevent reality fracturing. He turned to Kai. Access the historical database from the crystal Xylene provided. See if there are precedents for this type of attack and effective responses. To Xylene herself, he added, your knowledge of Maltruant's technology would be invaluable in developing a response strategy. The smooth efficiency with which he integrated different expertise sources into a cohesive approach, without ego or hesitation, demonstrated exactly what he had described during evaluation, the stray NGTH derived from meaningful connections rather than isolated authority. As they moved swiftly toward the station's transport system to return to Earth, the council members followed, ostensibly to observe. Though their varying expressions suggested different expectations for what would unfold, the Chronosapian representative maintained precise mechanical movements that revealed nothing of their internal processes. Yet Ben, with perception enhanced by the celestial Omnitrix, noticed subtle temporal distortions surrounding them, microsecond pauses in reality that suggested communication occurring outside normal time flow. The evaluation had moved from theoretical to practical. How they responded to this engineered crisis would likely determine Earth's future relationship with the Galactic Sea. Immunity more definitively than any diplomatic exchange. The plumber emergency transport materialized at the designated arrival coordinates in Ben's headquarters facility. The dimensional disruption from the unidentified vessel had already begun affecting the surrounding area. Reality fluctuations visible as rippling distortions in the air, occasional objects phasing between existence states. Gravity irregularities causing smaller items to drift upward before crashing down again. Ben immediately assessed the situation with enhanced perception, the celestial Omnitrix pulsing with increasing energy as it interfaced with the destabilizing dimensional barriers. Julie moved directly to the quantum monitoring station, her fingers flying across specialized controls as she analyzed the disruption patterns. It's a forced resonance cascade, she reported with professional precision that masked appropriate alarm. The device is generating quantum fluctuations specifically calibrated to interact with the Omnitrix's dimensional signature. They're trying to trigger uncontrolled dimensional bleeding between our reality and adjacent timelines. Kai accessed the crystalline database Xylene had provided, quickly navigating its complex information architecture with practiced skill. Historical precedent identified, she announced after moments of intense search. 3 previous instances of Maltruant-derived technology used for dimensional barrier weakening. All targeted nexus points similar to what the celestial Omnitrix has established here. The council representatives had wound themselves around the command center, observing but not interfering as Earth's defenders organized their response. The Chronosapian member maintained particular focus on the dimensional readings, their mechanical body occasionally emitting subtle ticks that seemed synchronized with the disruption patterns outside. Xylene moved to Ben's side, her expression revealing both concern and strategic calculation. The vessel's configuration suggests temporal elimination division design, a specialized Chronosapian Black Operations unit officially disbanded after the Time War. Their typical objective is erasure of timeline branches considered developmentally inappropriate by certain council factions. Ben absorbed this information without allowing it to distract from immediate response needs. Their current objective appears to be forcing dimensional instability rather than direct timeline erasure. Why? Because direct erasure would violate council non-interference protocols, Xylene explained quietly. But if they can trigger a natural-appearing dimensional collapse, then Earth destroys itself through apparent technological mismanagement rather than external intervention, Ben concluded, immediately grasping the political strategy involved. A convenient demonstration of why lesser species shouldn't possess celestial-class technology. Julie called from the monitoring station. The disruption is establishing a resonance pattern with the quantum signature of our alternate reality visitors. I believe they're attempting to trigger catastrophic entanglement between dimensional variants, which would create a cascading collapse affecting multiple timelines simultaneously, Ben reasoned, the Omnitrix enhancing his understanding of the complex dimensional physics involved. Maximum damage with technically deniable responsibility. He turned to address both his team and the observing council members with calm determination that belied the crisis unfolding around them. We have 3 objectives. Neutralize the dimensional disruption device, contain reality fluctuations already in progress, and establish countermeasures against similar future attempts. The Galvan Elder floated forward slightly. The Council observes but does not officially authorize intervention in what appears to be a rogue operation not sanctioned by galactic authority. The careful pH, raising, neither condemning the attack nor offering assistance, revealed the delicate political position the Council maintained. They would watch Earth's response while preserving deniability regardless of outcome. Ben acknowledged this with diplomatic understanding that masked any frustration he might have felt. Earth will address this threat independently while appreciating the Council's observant ion of our crisis management capabilities. He turned to Julie. Can we adapt the counter-phase system we developed during the alternate reality incursion to neutralize this disruption? She was already modeling potential solutions. Her focus absolute despite the intensifying reality fluctuations around them. The principle is similar but the scale significantly larger. We would need to generate a counter-resonance field encompassing the entire affected area, approximately 8 square kilometers now and expanding. The celestial Omnitrix can generate the necessary field, Ben determined, tuning the device as it pulsed with increasing energy. But precise calibration will require exact frequency matching to the disruption pattern. Which means direct interface with the quantum core again, Julie concluded. Their minds following parallel analytical paths to the same conclusion. But this time we'll need to extend the neural interface to include direct connection with the disruption device itself. Kai looked up from the historical database with sudden urgency. That matches the pattern from previous incidents. In all 3 historical cases, the targeted custodian attempted direct neural interface with the disruption technology. In 2 instances, the result was complete neural collapse of the custodian and catastrophic dimensional fracturing. The implied danger hung in the air between them. Ben processed this information with the measured assessment that had increasingly defined his leadership approach. What happened in the 3rd case? He asked Kai directly. Partial success, she answered, continuing to extract relevant details from the dense historical record. The custodian survived but with significant neural damage. The dimensional disruption was contained but not completely reversed. What was different in that 3rd case? Ben pressed, seeking applicable patterns rather than merely statistical outcomes. Kai's expression changed as she located the critical information. The custodian wasn't alone in the neural interface. They established a shared connection with 3 trusted associates, creating a distributed consciousness that prevented noise. Raw overload while maintaining sufficient coherence to implement countermeasures. Ben glanced toward Julie, their shared experience with neural interface during the previous dimensional crisis immediately relevant. A distributed approach using multiple consciousness nodes to process different aspects of the counter-resonance generation. Theoretically viable, Julie confirmed, already calculating parameters for such an approach. But significantly more complex than our previous interface. We would need at minimum 3 participants with specialized knowledge domains, someone to maintain connection with the Omnitrix core, someone to analyze and respond to the disruption device's frequency patterns, and someone to coordinate the counter-resonance field generation and distribution. Ben's gaze moved from Julie to Kai, then settled on Xylene, who had been observing their problem-solving process with evident interest. We need 3 consciousness nodes with complementary knowledge domains. Scientific expertise in quantum dimensional physics. He nodded toward Julie. Historical understanding of previous similar events and response patterns. His gaze shifted to Kai. An advanced Knowledge of consciousness transfer across dimensional boundaries. Xylene understood his implication immediately. Xyrites possess natural telepathic abilities that facilitate consciousness distribution. I could potentially serve as the coordination node for a multi-mind interface. The Chronosapian representative's mechanical body emitted a sudden series of rapid ticks, their species equivalent of alarm or objection. Council representatives cannot directly participate in species-specific crisis response. Such involvement would constitute interference in natural developmental processes. Xylene turned to face her fellow council member with diplomatic precision that nevertheless conveyed unmistakable resolve. I temporarily recuse myself from council representation capacity to act in my authorized role as guardian of nexus points. The dimensional disruption threatens multiple realities under Guardian protection jurisdiction. The legal and political maneuver was executed with such perfect procedural correctness that it left the Chronosapian no immediate counter without revealing factional objectives. The other council members exchanged glances of varying reaction, some apparing impressed by the tactical flexibility, others concerned by the potential precedent. The Galvan elder merely inclined their heads slightly. The Council acknowledges Guardian jurisdiction in matters of cross-dimensional stability at established nexus points. With political objections temporarily neutralized, Ben returned focus to practical implementation. We'll need to establish the interface connection in proximity to both the Omnitrix and the disruption device for maximum effectiveness. That means on the roof, directly beneath the vessel. Julie was already preparing the necessary equipment for neural interface. Her movements efficient despite the increasingly unstable environment. Objects throughout the facility now randomly phased between solid and transparent states as reality fluctuations intensified. The interface should be established within 12 minutes, she advised, checking calculations on her specialized equipment. After that, the dimensional instability will be Jin affecting neural electrical patterns, making consciousness sharing increasingly hazardous. Kai gathered the historical records they might need, transferring crucial information to portable devices. According to the records, maintaining individual identity boundaries while sharing consciousness processing capacity was the critical factor in the partially successful historical case. Xylene moved toward them with fluid grace that seemed unaffected by the gravitational irregularities now manifesting throughout the facility. Xyrite telepathic techniques include specific protocols for maintaining identity coherence during consciousness sharing. I can implement these protections during the interface. As final preparations were made, Ben addressed the remaining council representatives with diplomatic respect that nevertheless conveyed absolute determination. The council is welcome to observe our response from a safe distance. We appreciate your interest in Earth's crisis management and capabilities and look forward to resuming formal evaluation after successful resolution of this situation. The subtle emphasis on successful resolution communicated confidence rather than uncertainty, a psychological stance that several council members appeared to note with varying degrees of approval or skepticism. The Chronosapian representative's mechanical features revealed nothing, the temporal distortions surrounding them had intensified. The Council will indeed observe with great interest. The outcome will provide valuable assessment data regarding Earth's readiness for celestial-class technology responsibility. Quote, as Ben led his team toward the roof access, the celestial Omnitrix pulsed with increasing energy that seemed to partially stabilize reality fluctuations in its immediate vicinity. The device was already responding to the dimensional threat, but required conscious direction to implement effective countermeasures. The facility's roof access opened to reveal a sky transformed by the unidentified vessel's presence. The massive ship hovered approximately 300 meters above them, its dimensional disruption device projecting visible energy patterns had distorted the very fabric of reality below. The air itself seemed to ripple with quantum instability, occasional tears in space-time briefly revealing glimpses of alternate versions of Bellwood, some thriving, others in various states of destruction or alteration. Julie quickly established the neural interface equipment, creating a triangular configuration that would position each participant at equal distance from the others while maximizing energy flow between them. The celestial Omnitrix would serve as the primary power source and implementation mechanism for whatever countermeasures they developed. The disruption pattern is accelerating, she reported, monitoring quantum fluctuations with her specialized equipment. We're seeing increasing alignment with the specific frequency C-G nature of our alternate reality visitors. They're trying to force catastrophic quantum entanglement, which would not only destroy both realities but potentially create a cascading collapse affecting dozens of adjacent timelines. Xylene added, her understanding of cross-dimensional physics evident. A strategically effective demonstration of the dangers of uncontrolled evolutionary technology. Ben studied the vessel above with enhanced perception granted by the Omnitrix. The ship's design incorporates temporal shielding that would protect its occupants from dimensional collapse. They tend to survive the demonstration they're creating. His expression revealed not anger but resolute determination as he took his position in the neural interface configuration. Let's show them a different demonstration. One that proves Earth can responsibly manage celestial-class technology even under direct attack. Kai and Julie took their positions, completing the triangular arrangement with Xylene at its center. The Uxorite moved with practiced efficiency as she established preliminary telepathic connections between all participants, lightweight mental bridges that would facilitate the fuller consciousness sharing to follow. I will maintain identity coherence boundaries during the interface, she explained as she completed the preparations. Each of you will remain distinctly yours. LF while sharing processing capacity for specific functions. Benjamin will direct the Omnitrix's counter-resonance generation, drive. Yamamoto will analyze and respond to disruption patterns, and Ms. Gray N will provide historical response templates and monitor for pattern recognition. Julie activated the neural interface equipment, which immediately established energy connections between all participants. Interface activating in 3, 2, 1. The transition from individual to shared consciousness occurred with surprising smoothness, like suddenly perceiving through multiple sensory frame. Works simultaneously while maintaining core identity. Ben felt his awareness expand to include aspects of Julie's analytical precision and Kai's historical pattern recognition, while Xylene's telepath. IC guidance maintained clear boundaries between their individual selfhoods. Through their shared perception, the dimensional disruption became visible in its full complexity, not merely as energy patterns but as deliberate manipulations of quantum resonance frequencies designed to force specific reality-altering outcomes. The attack was far more sophisticated than it had initially appeared, with multiple redundant systems ensuring continued operation even if certain components were neutralized. They've studied the Celestial Omnitrix's operational parameters in detail. Julie's consciousness observed within their shared awareness. The disruption frequencies are specifically calibrated to interact with its dimensional regulation systems. Similar calibration patterns appeared in history. Cases where Chronosapian factions attempted to eliminate emerging evolutionary technologies. Kai's consciousness added, her access to the historical database now directly integrated into their shared perception. Ben directed their collective attention toward the disruption device itself, the Celestial Omnitrix responding to his focused intent by enhancing their perception of its operational mechanics. The primary resonance generator is protected by temporal phase shifting. It exists partially outside normal time flow to prevent direct intervention. A standard temporal elimination division tactic, Xylene confirmed. Her extensive knowledge of Chronosapian methodology now accessible to all. They position critical components in micro-temporal bubbles that make them effectively untouchable by conventional countermeasures. Through their enhanced collective perception, they could see how the disruption was progressing, reality barriers thinning not just in their immediate vicinity, but throughout Bellwood and potentially beyond. If the process continued unchecked, dimensional collapse would become inevitable within approximately 17 minutes. Direct neutralization of the device isn't possible given its temporal shielding, Ben reasoned, their shared consciousness allowing complex analysis at accelerated speeds. We need to approach this differently, not by attacking the device itself but by reconfiguring our reality's response to its influence. Julie's scientific understanding immediately grasped the concept. Adaptive dimensional frequency modulation. Instead of trying to counter their disruption pattern directly, we shift our reality's resonance frequency to a harmonic that doesn't interact destructively with their signal. Like changing which station a radio receives, Kai conceptualized. Making the complex physics accessible through metaphor. We don't stop them from broadcasting their disruption signal, we just change our reality's receiving frequency so it no longer picks up their transmission. The celestial Omnitrix can implement this approach, Ben determined, directing their collective attention to the device's quantum core. It already maintains Earth's connection to the wider dimensional spectrum. We can use that function to shift our local reality's resonance just enough to prevent destructive interaction with the disruption signal. Xylene coordinated their shared consciousness with remarkable skill, maintaining both individual identity coherence and effective collaboration. This approach aligns with Guardian principles of reality protection. Rather than engaging in escalating conflict, you're implementing a defensive adaptation that preserves dimensional integrity without direct confrontation. The celestial Omnitrix responded to their collective intent, its swirling patterns accelerating as it began generating the complex energy field necessary for reality frequency modulation. Through their shared perception, EY could see the field expanding outward from their position, a shimmering barrier of energy that didn't block the disruption signal but rather altered how local space-time responded to it. The unidentified vessel above them increased power to its disruption device, the energy patterns intensifying as its operators apparently detected the countermeasure being implemented. New frequency patterns emerged from the device, attempts to penetrate the protective field being established. They're adapting their approach, Julie observed, her scientific expertise immediately analyzing the new patterns. Implementing harmonic overtones designed to penetrate our frequency shift. Historical records show similar adaptation in previous encounters, Kai added, accessing relevant precedents from the database. Successful countermeasures required continuous modulation rather than static frequency shifting. Ben directed the Omnitrix to implement this insight, establishing a dynamic frequency modula pattern that continuously adjusted to the disruption device's attempts at penetration. The protective field surrounding Bellwood began shifting through subtle harmonic variations, never maintaining a single frequency long enough for the disruption signal to establish destructive resonance. Through their shared consciousness, they could perceive the growing frustration of the vessel's operator as their increasingly powerful disruption signals failed to penetrate the adaptive protection. Energy readings from the ship indicated systems being pushed beyond recommended operational parameters. They're approaching critical overload, Xylene warned, her experience with similar technology providing crucial context. If the disruption device exceeds containment tolerances, it could create an uncontrolled temporal implosion. Which would still accomplish their objective of demonstrating the dangers of celestial technology, Ben realized, understanding the strategic calculation involved. Even if it appears to be their own failure rather than ours. Their shared consciousness quickly evaluated options, processing possibilities at speeds impossible for individual minds. The Solutio emerged from their collective understanding, not a single person's idea but a truly integrated approach drawing on all their knowledge domains. We can use the celestial Omnitrix to establish a rolled temporal containment field around their vessel, Ben proposed, the device already responding to their developed intent. Not to attack but to contain the consequences of their own actions. A. Protective application rather than an offensive one, Xylene approved, the distinction important for both practical and diplomatic reasons. The Omnitrix pulsed with intensified energy as it generated the specialized containment field, a bubble of stabilized space-time that surrounded the vessel without directly interfering with its operations. If the disruption device exceeded safety parameters, the resulting temporal implosion would be contained within the bubble rather than affecting the surrounding area. From the vessel came sudden energy fluctuations suggesting emergency protocols being activated. Its operators had apparently recognized the containment strategy being implemented, and understood the implicit message it conveyed. They could continue their attack, but any destructive outcomes would be limited to their own vessel rather than achieving the wider demonstration effect they had intended. After moments of apparent internal deliberation, the disruption device powered down. The vessel's engines activated, and it began ascending rapidly toward the upper atmosphere, retreating without acknowledgement or communication. The neural interface participants maintained their consciousness long enough to ensure the dimensional disruption was truly subsiding rather than entering a new phase. As reality stabilized around them, quantum fluctuations diminishing, space-time integrity re-establishing, they carefully began the process of disengaging their consciousness sharing. Xylene coordinated the separation with the same skill she had demonstrated during integration, ensuring each mind returned properly to its individual state without carrying residual connections that might cause psychological complications. The process completed smoothly, though all participants experienced the momentary disorientation of returning to singular perception after experiencing shared consciousness. As the neural interface equipment powered down, Ben looked toward the observing NCIL members who had witnessed the entire response from a safe distance. Their reactions varied significantly, from the Galvan Elder's thoughtful assessment to the Chronosapian representative's unreadable mechanical features. Earth has successfully contained an unauthorized dimensional disruption attempt without requiring Council intervention, Ben stated with diplomatic precision that nevertheless conveyed justified confidence. We remain open to continuing formal evaluation at the Council's convenience. The Galvan Elder floated forward slightly, their expression revealing careful recalculation of previous assessments. The Council has observed significant demonstration of crisis management capabilities. Perhaps more importantly, we have witnessed an approach to celestial technology application that prioritizes protection over confrontation, adaptation over escalation. They glanced briefly toward the Chronosapian representative before continuing. These observations will feature prominently in our evaluation conclusions. The Chronosapian's mechanical body emitted a series of precise ticks that conveyed disagreement without explicitly challenging the Elder's statement. The evaluation remains incomplete. Observed crisis response represents a single data point rather than comprehensive assessment. Nevertheless, a meaningful data point, the Petrosapian diplomat interjected. Crystalline features refracting light in patterns suggesting approval, particularly in methodology. The multi-consciousness approach to problem-solving demonstrated exactly the philosophical framework Tennyson described during formal questioning, strength through diverse perspective integration rather than isolated authority. As the Council members continued their assessment discussion, Xylene approached Ben, Julie, and Kai with an expression that balanced professional approval with personal connection. The Guardian Council will be most interested in your adaptive frequency modulation approach, she noted. It represents a significant advancement in nexus point protection methodology, one that could be implemented at other vulnerable dimensional intersections throughout the multiverse. Her gaze met Ben's directly, conveying deeper meaning beyond professional assessment. Your approach to wielding the celestial Omnitrix continues to demonstrate why Azimuth selected Earth, and you specifically, for this responsibility. Where others might have responded with proportional force, you implemented protective adaptation that prevented escalation while still achieving necessary security. The observation carried weight beyond simple compliment. It represented validation from someone who had observed countless civilizations navigate the dangerous transitions that accompanied advanced technology acquisition. Her approval suggested not merely successful crisis management but philosophical alignment with principles that had proven sustainable across cosmic history. As the IATE situation stabilized and attention turned toward formal assessment resumption, Ben found himself evaluating not just the tactical success they had achieved but the deeper implications of how they had achieved it. The multi-consciousness approach had proven remarkably effective, combining scientific precision, historical context, and cosmic perspective into an integrated response that transcended what any individual could have developed alone. The celestial Omnitrix pulsed gently on his arm, its energy patterns suggesting harmony rather than the intense activity of crisis response. In that pulse seemed to confirm what he was beginning to understand about the device's true purpose, not merely as a tool for personal transformation but as a nexus for connecting diverse perspectives into something greater than the sum of individual contributions. As they prepared to return to Avalon Station for formal evaluation continuation, Ben exchanged meaningful glances with Julie, Kai, and Xylene, each connection representing a different yet equally essential aspect of the integrated understanding they were developing together. Where his younger self might have seen romantic potential or complications in these connections, his maturing perspective increasingly recognized something more profound, partnerships that transcended conventional categorization while offering balance his isolated consciousness could never achieve alone. The celestial Omnitrix continued its subtle pulsing, as if confirming connections that extended beyond conscious awareness, quantum entanglements of consciousness that would prove essential for whatever challenges still awaited them. The formal council evaluation concluded 3 days later with unprecedented results. Rather than issuing the St. Andard classification determination that would have placed Earth in a specific developmental category with corresponding technology access restrictions, the Council announced a new designation created specifically for Earth's unique circumstances: evolutionary nexus partner status. This designation acknowledged Earth's legitimate custodianship of the celestial Omnitrix while establishing cooperative oversight protocols rather than hierarchical restrictions. The practical effect recognized humanity's right to continue developing alongside the advanced technology while maintaining sufficient connection to the wider galactic community to prevent dangerous isolation. The final session of diplomatic negotiations had just concluded in Avalon's Grand Diplomatic Hall. Council representatives were preparing for departure while Earth's delegation finalized implementation details for the new cooperative arrangements. The atmosphere reflected cautious optimism rather than the tense uncertainty that had characterized initial meetings. Ben stood near one of the observation viewports, watching Earth rotate slowly below, appearing deceptively peaceful from orbital distance despite the profound transformations occurring on its surface. The celestial Omnitrix had settled into a state of balanced energy flow that suggested satisfaction with recent developments. Xylene approached with the Maya Surd grace characteristic of her species, her formal diplomatic attire replaced by the more practical garments of a guardian of nexus points now that official proceedings had concluded. The outcome exceeds optimal projections, she observed, joining him at the viewport. The Council rarely creates new classification categories, particularly for species as young as humanity. Ben studied her appreciation for both her diplomatic skill during negotiations and her willingness to directly assist during crisis. Your advocacy was instrumental in achieving this result. The Guardian perspective provided crucial balance to chronosapian containment arguments. Xylene's expression conveyed modest acknowledgement of her contribution while emphasizing broader factors. The result was primarily determined by Earth's demonstrated approach to celestial technology application, particularly your integration of diverse perspectives rather than isolated authority. She gestured subtly toward Kai and Julie were engaged in conversation with various delegation members, each sharing specialized knowledge relevant to implementation plans. Your connections to individuals with complementary wisdom domains proved more persuasive than any diplomatic argument I could have presented. Ben followed her gaze with thoughtful consideration. Those connections were once complicated by personal history. Now they've evolved into something I'm still coming to understand fully: partnerships that transcend conventional definitions while providing balance I couldn't achieve alone. Xylene studied him with the perspective of someone who had observed countless civilizations navigate similar transitions. Such evolution in relationship understanding often accompanies significant consciousness expansion. The celestial Omnitrix accelerates not only physical transformation capabilities but perception of connection patterns between beings. Her expression suggested personal as well as professional interest in this development. My species has long recognized that optimal functioning requires balance between autonomy and connection. Individual consciousness remains distinct while benefiting from resonance with complementary minds. Quote, the philosophical observation carried cultural implications Ben was still learning to interpret fully. Uxorite society maintains different relationship structures than most human cultures, doesn't it? He asked with genuine interest in understanding cosmic diversity rather than judgment. Indeed, Xylene confirmed, where many Earth cultures emphasize exclusive pairing bonds, Uxorites typically form connection networks with multiple individuals providing different essential perspectives and support functions. We find balanced completeness through diversity rather than singularity. The concept resonated with Ben's evolving understanding of his own needs since the celestial transformation, where his younger self had approached relationships with somewhat simplistic expectations. His expanding consciousness increasingly recognized the limitations of conventional frameworks. That perspective makes considerable sense given what we experienced during the neural interface. He acknowledged, each consciousness contributed something essential that others couldn't provide independently. The result was greater than what any of us could have achieved alone. Xylene's expression suggested approval of his developing understanding. This recognition represents significant evolutionary progress, both personally and potentially for humanity more broadly. The capacity to maintain distinct identity while benefiting from profound connection with diverse others is a hallmark of successful advanced civilizations. Their conversation paused as Kai approached, carrying the crystalline database Xylene had provided during their preliminary meeting. The archaeological expert had spent considerable time studying its contents beyond immediate crisis response needs. Guardian Xylene, she addressed with respectful formality that nevertheless conveyed developing personal connection. The historical records you provided contain references to several Earth sites that appear to have served as previous nexus points. I've identified patterns suggesting a systematic monitoring network established approximately 12,000 years ago. Xylene's luminous eyes revealed interest in this archaeological insight. The Guardian Council maintained observation protocols for promising worlds long before formal contact was established. Earth has been of particular interest due to your species' unusual adaptive potential. The records mention 17 primary monitoring locations, Kai continued, professional excitement evident despite her composed demeanor. I've confirmed 3 through existing archaeological evidence, but the others remain unidentified in current research literature. Perhaps a collaborative expedition might prove productive once immediate diplomatic matters are concluded, Xylene suggested, her interest clearly extending beyond mere professional courtesy. Guardian archives contain coordinate references that could expedite identification of remaining sites. The prospect of applying her archaeological expertise to previously inaccessible knowledge clearly appealed to Kai, whose expression revealed scholarly enthusiasm rarely displayed in formal diplomatic settings. Such collaboration would advance human understanding of our cosmic connections significantly. I would welcome the opportunity. Their discussion of potential expedition plans was joined by Julie, who had concluded her technical implementation briefings with various delegation members. The quantum stabilization protocols have been formally accepted by the Council Technical Division, she reported, her scientific precision complementing Kai's historical focus. They've requested permission to adapt our frequency modulation approach for application at other vulnerable nexus points throughout the multiverse. Ben noted how Julie's professional confidence had evolved since her return to Bellwood, her scientific contributions now recon IZED at interstellar levels rather than merely academic circles. That represents significant technology transfer from Earth outward rather than the traditional direction of flow. A notable shift in relationship dynamics. Indeed, Xylene agreed. The Council's willingness to adopt Earth-developed methodologies indicates evolving recognition of complementary contribution potential rather than hierarchical development models. Another promising indicator for sustained partnership. The 4 of them stood together near the viewport, Earth rotating slowly below as they discussed implementation. Details for the newly established relationship framework. What might once have been awkward tension between potential romantic rivals had evolved into something more complex and ultimately more valuable. A developing network of connections based on complementary expertise, shared purpose, and growing personal understanding. As the conversation continued, Ben found himself appreciating each distinct perspective they represented. Julie's scientific precision providing analytical clarity, Kai's historical knowledge offering contextual wisdom, Xylene's cosmic experience contributing evolutionary understanding, and his own unique connection to the Omnitrix integrating these diverse viewpoints into coherent application. The celestial Omnitrix pulsed gently on his arm, its energy patterns sugas ting harmony with this developing network of connections. What had begun as separate paths now converged around a shared purpose that transcended individual limitations while honoring distinct contributions, perhaps the most important transformation the device had catalyzed yet. As formal diplomatic proceedings concluded and the various delegations prepared for departure, this emerging network represented something beyond what formal agreements could capture, a living demonstration of the integration philosophy that had proven so effective during crisis response. Different minds maintaining distinct identities while forming a coherent system greater than the sum of individual components. The celestial Omnitrix continued its subtle pulsing, as if confirming connections that extend beyond conscious awareness, quantum entanglements of consciousness that would prove essential for whatever challenges awaited in humanity's evolving cosmic role. Chapter 3 End.